Have you ever looked up at the night sky and felt a profound sense of wonder, as if the stars were trying to tell you something? For as long as humans have walked this earth, we've gazed at the heavens, not just in awe, but in search of meaning. Our ancestors looked at those exact same constellations and saw gods, heroes, and epic tales written in glittering light. But what if those stories were more than just myths? What if they were a sophisticated language, a way of preserving knowledge about the cosmos that we're only now beginning to decode? Welcome to a journey through time and space, where we'll explore 35 myths that reveal the secrets of the stars. From the ancient builders who aligned their temples with celestial events to the storytellers who passed down star lore through generations, humanity has always had a deep and mysterious relationship with the night sky. These aren't just random tales, they're coded messages, maps, and memories that connect us to a time when the universe felt both intimate and immense. In this video, we'll uncover how myths from cultures across the world, from the Greeks to the Mayans, from the Egyptians to the Polynesian navigators, hold astonishingly accurate astronomical insights. You'll discover how a legend about a hero's journey might actually describe the motion of a planet, or how a creation myth could encode the timing of an eclipse. This is about more than just stories. It's about rediscovering a lost way of seeing the universe, one that blends science, spirituality, and storytelling into something truly magical. So settle in and let's embark on this adventure together to unravel the mysteries written in the stars. Our journey into the celestial secrets of myth begins not with the Greeks or the Egyptians, but in the dust of ancient Mesopotamia, with a story etched onto clay tablets. This is the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, and it's far more than a simple tale of gods at war. It is a staggering piece of cosmological code, a narrative that appears to describe the violent and chaotic birth of our solar system with an accuracy that seems to defy its own antiquity. At the heart of this myth is a cosmic battle. The story tells of the primordial goddess of the salt sea, Tiamat, a monstrous, chaotic force who decides to destroy her own divine children. From among these younger gods rises a champion, Marduk, who agrees to face Tiamat on the condition that he be granted supreme kingship if he prevails. The ensuing clash is epic. Marduk rides his chariot, the Four Winds, into battle. He unleashes a tremendous wind right into Tiamat's gaping mouth, preventing her from uttering her magical spells and inflating her body like a balloon. He then fires a single divine arrow straight into her distended belly, piercing her heart and splitting her body in two. With one half of her carcass, Marduk fashions the dome of the heavens. With the other, he creates the solid earth, establishing cosmic order from her chaos. Now, let's read this not as theology, but as astronomy. Modern researchers like the late, great polymath Emanuel Velikovsky and others who followed propose a radical interpretation. In this view, Tiamat is not a goddess but a protoplanet, a large, watery body orbiting in the early, unstable solar system. The younger gods who disturb her are other planetary bodies, their gravitational pulls creating immense chaos. Marduk is portrayed as a new, incoming celestial object, a massive rogue planet entering the scene. His chariot of the four winds could be a beautiful metaphor for a comet-like tail or a powerful magnetic field. The great wind he forces into Tiamat's mouth that could represent a massive gravitational or atmospheric interaction. The fatal arrow that splits her in two is the catastrophic collision itself. This interpretation suggests the myth preserves the memory of a colossal impact between a large planetary body and this protoplanet Tiamat. The debris from this incredible collision, according to the theory, did not just disappear. One half of her shattered form was flung inward, eventually accreting with other material to form our Earth. The other half was utterly pulverized, creating the great asteroid belt that now orbits between Mars and Jupiter, a permanent ring of cosmic rubble marking the site of an ancient celestial murder. The epic even describes how Marduk then sets his own orbit in the heavens and fixes the paths of the other gods, the planets. This mirrors the establishment of stable planetary orbits following the period of intense bombardment in the solar system's youth. The breathtaking implication is that the Babylonians, or the even more ancient Sumerians from whom they inherited this story, were preserving a memory of our solar system's most formative and violent event, an event that literally made our world possible. It's a story that explains why the asteroid belt exists, why the inner planets are rocky, and how cosmic order emerged from primeval chaos, all wrapped in the language of divine combat. But if the Mesopotamians saw a cosmic battle in the heavens, the ancient Egyptians perceived a different kind of celestial drama, one of cyclical renewal, a journey that must be completed each night to ensure the dawn would come again. This brings us to one of the most profound and visually stunning myths in all of history, the voyage of the solar bark. In this intricate belief system, the sun god Ra did not simply set in the west and vanish. Instead, each evening he embarked on a perilous 12-hour journey through the 12 regions of the underworld known as the Duat. This was no peaceful cruise. It was a nightly trial against chaos, against the great serpent Apophis who sought to devour the sun and plunge the world into eternal darkness. Ra, accompanied by a crew of other deities, had to navigate these treacherous waters, and his success was not guaranteed. The entire ritual of this journey was meticulously detailed in funerary texts like the Amjuat, literally meaning that which is in the underworld, which served as a divine map and guidebook. Now let's pull back the veil of metaphor. The 12 regions of the Duat correspond with breathtaking precision to the 12 hours of the Egyptian night. This isn't a coincidence. It represents a sophisticated temporal framework, a way of breaking down the unseen journey of the sun into measurable, understandable units. The Egyptians were brilliant astronomers. They understood the annual shifting of the sun's path and the varying lengths of day and night. This myth can be seen as their poetic and theological model for explaining this celestial mechanics. The sun wasn't gone, it was just on a necessary, invisible path beneath the world. The details get even more fascinating. Each hour or region of the Duat is described with its own geography, its own guardians, and its own specific challenges for Ra to overcome. Egyptologists have long interpreted this as an allegory for the soul's journey after death, but some researchers propose it might also be something else entirely, a coded manual for celestial navigation. The descriptions of the river, the banks, and the landmarks in the Duat bear a striking resemblance to the patterns of stars that would have been visible in the night sky. The Egyptians were master navigators, using the stars to traverse the Nile and the deserts. Could this myth be a spiritualized star chart, a way of passing down crucial navigational knowledge through a sacred, unforgettable story? The most mind-bending interpretation, however, pushes this idea into the realm of speculative physics. The journey through the Duat is not described as a simple linear trip. Time behaves differently there. It is a place of transformation and rebirth. Some modern thinkers have drawn a parallel between this and the concept of time dilation in Einstein's theory of relativity. The idea that time is not absolute, that it can stretch and compress depending on speed and gravity, is a cornerstone of modern physics. The myth, in its own symbolic language, might be touching on a similar profound truth, that a journey through the cosmic underworld or the fabric of space itself would fundamentally alter the experience of time. Ra emerges each morning, scarred but victorious, rejuvenated and ready to begin a new day. This is the ultimate promise of the myth, that order will always triumph over chaos, that light will always defeat darkness. It's a message of hope, but one built upon a deeply observant and remarkably advanced understanding of the cosmos, disguised as a divine adventure. While the Egyptians saw a journey through the underworld, the Greeks envisioned a figure of immense, eternal strength bearing the weight of the cosmos itself. We all know the image, the Titan Atlas forever straining under the colossal weight of the celestial sphere, a punishment from Zeus for leading the war against the Olympians. It's a powerful metaphor for a burdensome task, but what if this myth, too, is a profound piece of astronomical insight in disguise? Let's look closer at what Atlas is actually described as holding. In the earliest versions of the myth, he isn't holding the Earth on his shoulders. That's a later artistic simplification. The original texts, like Hesiod's Theogony, are very specific. Atlas is tasked with holding up Auranos, the sky, the heavens, the entire celestial vault. This is a crucial distinction. The ancient Greeks were meticulous observers of the night sky. They watched the stars rotate around the fixed point of the north celestial pole, and they wondered what kept that magnificent, glittering dome from simply crashing down upon the Earth. Their brilliant, poetic solution was Atlas. He is the physical explanation for a fundamental astronomical observation. Why don't the heavens fall? This idea of a cosmic force preventing collapse is astonishingly prescient. Today, we don't speak of a titan, but we do speak of gravity, the invisible force that holds planets in their orbits, binds galaxies together, and gives the universe its structure. Atlas, in this light, becomes a personification of that very gravitational principle, the literal support system of the cosmos. The myth even hints at a deeper layer of understanding regarding the nature of this force. Atlas is often depicted not just holding the sky, but separated from the Earth by a great distance, standing at its very edge. In some versions, he is positioned in the far west, near the Garden of the Hesperides, a land of perpetual evening. This evokes the concept of a cosmological horizon, the ultimate boundary of the known world. But the most mind-expanding interpretation connects this ancient titan to the most modern frontier of cosmology, the cosmic microwave background radiation. This is the faint, cold afterglow of the Big Bang, a microwave static that permeates all of space and is, in a very real sense, the literal fabric of the universe. It is the oldest light we can observe, and it defines the very structure of the cosmos. Think of Atlas now, not as a man holding a physical ball, but as a symbolic representation of this fundamental field. He is the force that provides the scaffolding for reality itself, the background pressure that prevents the universe from collapsing into nothingness. His eternal labor mirrors the constant underlying energy that suffuses the vacuum of space, a concept that would be utterly alien to the ancient Greeks, yet feels eerily echoed in their myth. The punishment of Atlas is also deeply significant. He is not just holding up the sky, he is holding it up forever, a task of infinite duration. This aligns perfectly with our modern understanding of these cosmic forces. Gravity and the cosmological constants are not temporary, they are perpetual, unending features of our universe. The myth, therefore, transcends a simple story of punishment. It becomes a sophisticated model for explaining the stability and permanence of the heavens, a testament to the Greek desire to find a rational, albeit divine, order behind the terrifying and beautiful chaos of the night sky. It is their answer to the most profound question of all: what holds it all up? From the ordered cosmos of the Greeks, we travel now to the frozen north, to a mythology as rugged and profound as the Vikings who revered it. Here, the entire universe is not held up by a titan, but is instead woven into the being of a single, magnificent ash tree. This is Yggdrasil, the world tree, and its myth is perhaps one of the most sophisticated cosmological models ever conceived in the ancient world. The Norse didn't imagine a flat Earth under a dome of sky. They envisioned a vast, living system of incredible complexity. Yggdrasil is described as an eternal green ash tree, and it has 3 great roots that extend into 3 different wells, each in a separate realm. These roots nourish the tree and, by extension, the entire cosmos. From its branches and among its roots exist the famous 9 worlds, including our own world of Midgard, the world of the gods, Asgard, and the world of the dead, Hel. An eagle perched at its highest branch, a dragon gnawing at its deepest root, and a squirrel constantly running messages of strife between them. This is far more than a simple family tree for the gods. When we analyze Yggdrasil through an astronomical lens, a stunning picture emerges. The concept of multiple worlds connected by a central axis is a recurring theme in astrophysics. Our own solar system is held together by the gravitational influence of the Sun, a central point around which all the planets orbit. Could Yggdrasil be a symbolic representation of the Sun's gravitational field, its roots and branches being the invisible lines of force that hold the celestial bodies in their respective places? The 9 worlds could then be seen as the Sun, the planets, and other significant bodies, all bound within this single, unified system. But the Norse vision was even grander. They spoke of 9 worlds, a number that intriguingly matches the count of the classical planets visible to the naked eye: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, plus the Sun, the Moon, our Earth, and the fixed realm of the stars. This alignment is too precise to dismiss as mere coincidence. It suggests a conscious effort to map the observable cosmos into a coherent spiritual and physical structure. The symbolism deepens with the creatures inhabiting the tree. The eagle at the top and the dragon, Nidhogg, at the bottom could represent opposing cosmic forces, like the tension between gravity and dark energy, or the balance required to maintain a stable system. The squirrel, Ratatoska, ferrying insults between them, might symbolize the constant exchange of energy or information. Perhaps even the flow of solar wind or cosmic rays that travels throughout the solar system, connecting all parts in a dynamic and sometimes turbulent relationship. Perhaps the most compelling interpretation connects Yggdrasil to one of the most exciting theories in modern cosmology, the cosmic web. Scientists now believe that the universe is not a random scatter of galaxies, but a vast, intricate network of filaments made primarily of dark matter. These filaments are the scaffolding upon which galaxies are built, connecting clusters and superclusters across unimaginable voids. Yggdrasil, with its roots and branches penetrating all the worlds, is a near-perfect mythological analog for this cosmic web. The tree isn't just in the universe, the tree is the universe, a living, breathing structure of connection. This idea of a fundamental interconnection is the true secret Yggdrasil reveals. The myth states that a wound to the tree is a wound to all the worlds, and that its wellness is vital for cosmic order. This echoes our modern understanding of how a supernova in a distant galaxy can seed new solar systems with the elements necessary for life, or how the gravity of an unseen galaxy can bend the light from another. Everything is linked. The Norns, the goddesses of fate who water Yggdrasil's roots from the well of Erd, add another layer. They represent the laws of physics themselves, the immutable constants and forces that govern the cosmos, ensuring its continued existence and order. The water from the well is the fundamental energy that sustains the structure of reality. The Norse seers who composed this myth looked at the starry sky and didn't just see points of light. They perceived a deep, resonant connection between all things, a universe alive with meaning and interaction, a concept that our most advanced science is only now beginning to fully apprehend. This idea of a fundamental cosmic interconnection, so vividly portrayed by Yggdrasil, finds a fascinating parallel in another ancient culture's attempt to explain the very origins of the universe. We now journey from the frozen halls of Asgard to the vibrant, spiritually rich world of Hindu cosmology, home to one of the most visually spectacular and intellectually profound creation myths ever conceived, the churning of the ocean of milk, or the Samudra Manthan. At first glance, the story reads like an epic divine drama. The Devas, or gods, have lost their power and immortality. To regain it, they must work with their rivals, the Asuras, or demons, to churn the primordial ocean of milk and extract the nectar of immortality, the Amrita. They use the massive Mount Mandara as a churning rod, and the great serpent Vasuki, king of the Nagas, as the churning rope. the gods take hold of Vasuki's tail, the demons his head, and they begin to pull back and forth, rotating the mountain with incredible force. But when we shift our perspective from theology to astronomy, this entire elaborate operation transforms into a breathtaking allegory for cosmic creation. The primordial ocean of milk is not a body of water. It can be interpreted as the formless, undifferentiated energy field that existed before the Big Bang, a quantum foam of pure potentiality. The act of churning this ocean is the introduction of a fundamental force that agitates this energy, causing it to coalesce and condense into matter. The two opposing teams, the Devas and the Asuras, represent the fundamental dualities and opposing forces that govern our universe: positive and negative charge, gravity and electromagnetism, matter and antimatter. Their cooperative yet competitive tug-of-war is the dynamic tension necessary for creation to occur, a constant push and pull that structures the cosmos. Mount Mandara, the churning rod, is the axis of rotation, a central point around which this immense energy is organized. This could symbolize the initial spin or angular momentum that is imparted to a forming galaxy, causing it to spiral. The serpent Vasuki, coiled around the mountain, is a perfect symbol for the gravitational forces that bind celestial structures together, his coils representing the invisible, constricting arms of a spiral galaxy taking shape. As the churning commences, the process doesn't immediately yield the desired nectar. Instead, the first thing to emerge from the churning ocean is a deadly poison, halahala, so toxic it threatens to destroy all of creation. Lord Shiva, in an act of supreme benevolence, contains the poison in his throat, saving the universe but turning his neck blue. In a cosmic interpretation, this terrifying poison could represent the initial violent and chaotic periods of the universe's infancy, such as the era of quasars and gamma-ray bursts, or even the clouds of antimatter and radiation that would have been lethal to any nascent life. Shiva's act of containment symbolizes the eventual stabilization of these forces, allowing for the universe to become habitable. Only after this dangerous phase do the treasures, or ratnas, begin to emerge, and each one is a spectacular celestial metaphor in its own right. The goddess Lakshmi, emerging radiant and beautiful, symbolizes the abundance of the universe, the sheer wealth of stars and planets that form from cosmic dust. The divine white elephant, Airavata, represents massive, stable cosmic structures, perhaps even the first supermassive black holes at the center of galaxies. The magical wish-fulfilling tree, Kalpavriksha, might stand for the laws of physics themselves, the underlying code that allows the universe to function and grant the existence of complex phenomena. The emergence of the moon from the ocean could be a direct reference to the capture of a large planetary body that became our moon, an event critical to stabilizing Earth's rotation. Finally, the ultimate prize, the Amrita itself, the nectar of immortality, arrives, carried by the physician of the gods, Dhanvantari. This could symbolize the eventual formation of planets within the habitable zone of their stars, where the conditions are just right for the chemistry of life to begin, a recipe for biological immortality written in the stars. The ensuing battle between the gods and demons over the Amrita mirrors the constant struggle between order and chaos, between the forces that allow life to flourish and those that seek to disrupt it. The myth in its entirety is a grand narrative of creation, from the first agitation of energy to the formation of galaxies, stars, planets, and finally, the precious, fragile possibility of life itself, all encoded in a story of gods, demons, and a churning ocean. While the Hindu vision of creation is one of dynamic churning and opposition, ancient Chinese cosmology presents us with a universe of perfect, orderly administration. Here, the cosmos is not a battlefield or a tree, but a vast, meticulously run imperial court. At its head sits the Jade Emperor, the supreme deity, and beneath him stretches an elaborate celestial bureaucracy of ministers, officials, and departments, each responsible for a specific aspect of cosmic and earthly affairs. This might sound like a simple projection of earthly imperial rule onto the heavens, but to dismiss it as such is to miss a breathtakingly sophisticated astronomical model. This celestial government, with its divine officials and precise duties, appears to be a complex codex mapping the movements, relationships, and functions of the stars and planets themselves. Imagine the night sky not as a random scattering of lights, but as a grand organizational chart. The Jade Emperor, in his supreme position, could be seen as the pole star, the fixed, unmoving center of the heavenly dome around which all other celestial bodies revolve. This central, anchoring figure is a concept found in many cultures, but the Chinese took it a step further by creating an entire civil service around him. Each of his heavenly ministers and officials corresponds to a specific celestial body or constellation, and their assigned portfolios are directly tied to the phenomena those bodies influence. For instance, the deity in charge of thunderstorms doesn't just create rain. He is the personification of a specific planetary alignment or a star cluster whose appearance in the sky historically coincided with the monsoon season. The entire ministry of thunder might correspond to a specific sector of the sky that becomes active during certain times of the year. This isn't mere superstition. It's a highly refined system of correlative thinking where the macrocosm of the heavens is perfectly mirrored in the microcosm of human government and natural events on Earth. The movements and interactions of these divine officials, their promotions, demotions, and reports to the emperor are allegories for the predictable yet complex motions of the planets as they transit through different constellations. A planet moving into a new house of the zodiac might be described in the myth as an official being transferred to a new provincial post, bringing his specific influence to that region of the celestial kingdom. This intricate system allowed ancient Chinese astronomers to track, predict, and catalogue celestial events with remarkable accuracy. They could create detailed calendars and astronomical charts by following the bureaucratic paperwork of the heavens. The myth provided a memorable and engaging framework for preserving and transmitting this vast amounts of data across generations. The parallels to our modern understanding of cosmic structure are uncanny. Today, we don't speak of a ministry of thunder, but we do have fields of study like meteorology and climatology, which are governed by the laws of physics. We don't have a celestial official for epidemics, but we understand the influence of seasonal changes, which are dictated by Earth's orbit and axial tilt on the spread of disease. The ancient Chinese model, in its own poetic way, was recognizing that every earthly phenomenon has a cosmic trigger, an underlying physical law. Their celestial bureaucracy is a personified representation of the cosmic hierarchy of cause and effect, the interconnected system of natural laws that govern everything from the weather to the growth of crops. The sheer stability and order of this system is its most profound feature. The celestial bureaucracy, like any well-run government, operates on rules and procedures. This reflects a deep-seated belief in a rational, ordered universe, one that operates on predictable principles rather than capricious whims. This belief was the driving force behind centuries of meticulous astronomical observation in China, leading to some of the most detailed and longest-running records of celestial events in human history, including guest stars, what we now call supernova, and the movements of comets. They saw the universe as a comprehensible system, and their myth of the Jade Emperor and his court was the user manual. Across vastly different cultures, we find this recurring theme of a structured, interconnected cosmos, but perhaps no mythology blends earthly landscape with celestial truth more intimately than that of Australia's First Peoples. Now we travel to the world's oldest living culture, where the very land itself is a celestial map and history is written not in books but in the stars. For the Aboriginal peoples, the concept of dreamtime or the dreaming is not a distant past but a continuous, living reality, a timeless era when ancestral beings shaped the world, and their journeys became embedded in the landscape and, most significantly for our journey, in the night sky. Their stories of the Milky Way are not mere legends. They are a complex and precise oral encyclopedia of astronomy, preserving observations so accurate they stagger modern scientists. Consider the Emu in the sky, a constellation known to many groups across the continent. Unlike Western constellations that connect stars with imaginary lines to form pictures, this one is a breathtaking example of negative space astronomy. The shape of the Emu is not defined by the stars themselves, but by the dark patches of interstellar dust clouds within the Milky Way, its head formed by the famous Coalsack Nebula near the Southern Cross, its long neck and bulky body stretching along the galactic stream. The genius of this observation is profound. These dark nebulae are not empty voids, they are colossal clouds of gas and dust, the very nurseries where new stars are born. The Aboriginal astronomers didn't just see the light, they perceived the dark, fertile structure within it. The mythology surrounding this celestial emu is directly tied to the Earth and its cycles. When the emu appears in the evening sky in April, its posture head upright and body low signals that it is time to collect emu eggs, a vital food source. Later in the year, as the Earth rotates, the emu appears to change its position, seeming to run across the sky, which the stories interpret as the emu fleeing. By November, it appears to be standing on its head, which coincides with the egg-laying season being over. This isn't poetry, it's a highly accurate, multi-layered seasonal calendar, intertwining celestial mechanics with ecology and survival, a system refined over tens of thousands of years. The astronomical insights go far beyond seasonal markers. The Borong people of Victoria tell a story of a supernova event. Their constellation of war, represented by the star Antares, is said to have been struck on the thigh by a club thrown by the ancestor Nelon, causing it to bleed and grow dim. Astronomers have confirmed that around the year 1843, Antares did indeed undergo a significant dimming event, something that would have been clearly visible to meticulous watchers of the sky. But even more remarkably, the Borong also speak of a brilliant new star that appeared in the sky, named by them as Cologaleric War, the wife of war. Researchers like astrophysicist Ray Norris have matched this description to the supernova of the year 1843, which created the spectacular remnant we now call RCW86. This event was also recorded by Chinese astronomers, but the Borong story adds a rich cultural layer, integrating the cataclysmic stellar explosion into their existing cosmic family drama, preserving the memory of a transient celestial event for generations through story alone. This oral tradition functioned with the precision of a scientific database. Knowledge was not kept by a single person but was distributed across communities, with different groups being custodians of specific parts of a story that, when pieced together, formed a complete and accurate picture of the world. The routes of the ancestral beings created songlines, paths across the land that correspond directly to paths in the sky. To navigate the vast Australian continent, one could sing the song of the land while following the corresponding star in the heavens. A songline for a journey from the coast to the outback might have you walking under the guidance of a particular star cluster, with each verse of the song describing a landmark you should be passing at that time. This is a three-dimensional map of incredible sophistication, blending geodesy, astronomy, and mnemonics into a single, unforgettable practice. The stories ensured the survival of this knowledge through ice ages and millennia, proving that oral tradition, when woven into the very fabric of culture and identity, can be as enduring and accurate as any written text. It represents a way of knowing that sees no separation between the land, the sky, and the people, a holistic science that has watched the cosmos evolve and has recorded its history in the most resilient medium of all, human memory, passed down through an unbroken chain of storytelling beneath the southern skies. Their stories reveal a universe where every dark patch and bright star holds meaning, a concept we find echoed in the mythology of another culture renowned for its celestial mastery. We now venture into the humid jungles of Mesoamerica to the world of the ancient Maya, a civilization whose very existence was calibrated to the rhythms of the cosmos. Here we encounter one of the most dynamic and action-packed myths in their sacred text, the Popol Vuh, the saga of the hero twins Hunahpu and Xbalanque. On the surface, it's a classic tale of two clever brothers descending into the terrifying nine-tiered underworld of Xibalba to avenge their father and defeat the arrogant death gods. But when we view their harrowing journey through an astronomical lens, a spectacular possibility emerges: that this is not just a story of the underworld, but a detailed allegory for the perilous voyage of a celestial body across the night sky, perhaps even a metaphorical guide to space itself. The twins' adventure begins with their descent down a steep road to the underworld, a path fraught with danger. This could easily symbolize the path of a planet like Venus as it dips below the horizon, entering what the Maya saw as the dangerous realm of the unseen. The Maya were obsessed with Venus not as a benign evening star, but as a volatile, powerful deity whose movements were meticulously tracked and feared. Its disappearance and reappearance were events of great portent, and the trials of the hero twins mirror the perceived trials Venus itself would face during its conjunction with the Sun, when it was lost from view in the blinding solar glare. The lords of Xibalba themselves, the death gods with names like One Death and Seven Death, may not be mere monsters. They could personify the specific perils a celestial traveler might encounter. The deadly tests the twins must overcome in each of the underworld's houses read less like arbitrary torture and more like a catalogue of cosmic hazards. In the dark house, a place of absolute blackness, they are given torches and cigars to keep alight. This could represent the challenge of navigating the profound darkness of deep space, where maintaining power and life support is a constant struggle. The torchlight is the spacecraft's own energy, a tiny beacon against an infinite void. The razor house, filled with shifting, lethal blades, evokes the ever-present danger of micrometeoroids or space debris, whirling around at unimaginable speeds, capable of shredding any object in their path. The cold house, a chamber of biting frost, and the jaguar house, filled with savage predators, could symbolize the extreme temperature variances and the unknown, potentially hostile environments of other planets or moons. The most famous test is the bat house, where the twins must survive a swarm of deadly bats, a creature strongly associated with the night and the underworld in Mayan iconography. One of the brothers, Hunahpu, even loses his head to a great bat god, Camazotz. This dramatic event has a potential parallel in astronomy. The decapitation and subsequent resurrection of Hunahpu could be a metaphor for a planetary occultation when one celestial body passes in front of another, momentarily decapitating it from view, or even the phases of Venus itself, which appears to wane to nothing before waxing again. The twins' ultimate victory, achieved through cunning, illusion, and a form of resurrection, symbolizes the triumphant return of the celestial body, its reappearance in the morning or evening sky, having successfully navigated the gauntlet of the underworld. This cyclical journey of death and rebirth was the cornerstone of Mayan cosmology, and the hero twins were its ultimate protagonists, but some interpretations push this even further, suggesting the myth encodes concepts that border on the principles of space travel. The detailed description of the underworld's layout, with its specific houses and challenges, could be seen as a procedural manual for a soul's or a spacecraft's journey through a perilous, non-earthly environment. The twins' use of clever tricks to defeat beings of immense power reflects the kind of problem-solving necessary for overcoming obstacles where brute force is impossible, much like using gravitational slingshots or precise calculations to navigate the solar system. This story, preserved for centuries, demonstrates a mind-bendingly sophisticated understanding of the cosmos as a place of dynamic, dangerous, and beautiful movement, where even the gods themselves were subject to the immutable laws of celestial motion. But if the Maya saw a perilous journey through a dark realm, the Celts of ancient Europe envisioned a different kind of passage, one not of descent but of instantaneous transition made possible by a single mystical object. We now turn to the enchanting and often enigmatic world of Celtic mythology, where we find the legend of the silver branch. This was no ordinary piece of flora. It was a divine artifact, a key that could unlock the doors between our world and the myriad other realms of the Celtic cosmos, known as the Otherworld. Often described as a branch from an apple tree, its leaves were said to be made of the finest silver, and it bore crystalline or shimmering fruit that emitted an unearthly, ethereal music. When shaken, its chime was so hauntingly beautiful that it could enchant all who heard it, calming warriors, silencing courts, and most importantly, parting the veil between realities to allow the bearer to step through. On one level, this is a powerful metaphor for the power of poetry and music to transport the human spirit. But when we listen more closely to that celestial chime, we begin to hear the echoes of some of the most cutting-edge concepts in modern theoretical physics. The most straightforward interpretation paints the silver branch as a stunningly prescient metaphor for a wormhole. In Celtic lore, the Otherworld wasn't a faraway place in the sky or underground. It was often described as being coterminous with our own, existing just alongside us but invisible, accessible only through specific, hidden thresholds like ancient burial mounds, misty lakes, or indeed with the shaking of this magical branch. This aligns perfectly with the scientific concept of a wormhole, a theoretical bridge or tunnel through the fabric of space-time, creating a shortcut for travel between two distant points or even two different universes. The act of shaking the branch and hearing its music could be seen as the activation of this portal, the specific resonant frequency or energy required to stabilize the throat of the wormhole and make it traversable. The silver fruit hanging from the branch takes on a new meaning in this light. Rather than simple apples, they could be seen as symbolic representations of celestial bodies, stars, planets, or even entire galaxies that are connected by these cosmic pathways. The branch itself, then, becomes a map of a localized cosmic network, a diagram of entanglement showing how points we perceive as impossibly distant are, in fact, intimately linked. This idea of connection brings us to an even more profound possibility: the silver branch as an allegory for quantum entanglement. This bizarre phenomenon, which Einstein himself famously referred to as spooky action at a distance, describes how two particles can become linked in such a way that the state of one instantly influences the state of the other, regardless of the physical distance separating them. There is no known communication between them. They simply remain mysteriously and instantly correlated. Now consider the silver branch. It is a single, unified object whose individual parts, the silver leaves and the resonant fruit, are all inherently connected. The music emitted from one fruit would instantly affect the entire system. This isn't just a simple musical instrument. It's a model of a quantum system where every component is in constant, instantaneous communication with every other. The bard or hero who carries the branch isn't just holding a key. They are holding a device that demonstrates the fundamental non-locality of the universe, the idea that separation may be an illusion. By shaking it, they are not traveling a great distance, but rather manipulating the underlying connectedness of all things, stepping into a reality that was always right there, just on the other side of the veil we perceive. The mythology supports this deeper reading. The silver branch was not a tool for conquest, but one for invitation and diplomacy. It was often carried by emissaries from the otherworld who came to invite a worthy mortal to visit their realm. This suggests that crossing over required not just the right technology, but the right state of being or consciousness. It implies a universe built on relationship and resonance, where access to higher dimensions or distant stars is governed by harmony and understanding rather than brute force. The branch's beautiful music, which charms and pacifies, could be the very symbol of this harmonious resonance, the precise vibrational alignment needed to slip between the folds of reality. In a universe described by string theory, where all fundamental particles are believed to be tiny, vibrating strings, the silver branch becomes a potent symbol. Its music is the literal vibration of reality itself, and the bearer who learns its melodies is essentially learning to play the cosmic strings, to manipulate the very code of the universe to open a door. This Celtic myth, passed down through generations of bards, seems to intuit a universe that is deeply interconnected, vibrational, and multi-layered, offering a poetic key to concepts that our science is still struggling to fully articulate, a key not of iron but of silver and song. These stories of mystical branches and cosmic gateways find a different, yet equally profound, expression in the star lore of native North America. Across countless tribes, from the plains to the Pacific Northwest, a strikingly similar narrative emerges, often called the star husband or star boy myth. In its most common form, the story tells of a young woman, often at a time of solitude or deep contemplation, who looks up at the night sky and expresses a desire to marry a star. Her wish is miraculously granted, and she is taken up to the celestial realm to live with her star husband. While this begins as a life of wonder, it often ends with a longing for her earthly home, leading to a perilous descent back to Earth, sometimes with a celestial child. On the surface, it's a beautiful folktale about the dangers of wishes and the importance of home. But when we listen closely to the specific details embedded in these stories by different nations, a far more astonishing possibility comes into focus, one that seems to describe the visceral, physical reality of space travel with an accuracy that defies simple explanation. Many versions of the tale include a crucial and eerie detail about the journey itself. The woman doesn't just float up gracefully, she is often pulled upward through a long, dark, and tunnel-like passage. The Pawnee tell of such a tunnel connecting the Earth and the stars. This description is deeply unsettling because it doesn't match a traditional ascent to heaven. It feels more like a launch tube or a wormhole. For a culture with no concept of rocket science, this is a bizarrely specific detail that resonates powerfully with the modern astronaut's experience of being launched into space, where they are propelled at great speed through the atmosphere, watching the blue sky fade into the profound blackness of the void. Once she arrives in the star village, the descriptions become even more peculiar. The Skiddy Pawnee version describes the star people themselves as glowing with a soft, internal light and moving with a slow, graceful, almost floating motion. To a modern reader, this is a near-perfect depiction of beings living in a low-gravity or zero-gravity environment, where every movement is deliberate and fluid to avoid momentum carrying one away. The woman is often warned not to dig or explore certain areas. In one widespread telling, she disobeys this warning and digs a hole, only to look through it and see her old home, Earth, far below, which fills her with an irresistible homesickness. This is perhaps the most chillingly accurate detail of all. It suggests a viewing port or a telescope, a technology that allows the star people to observe Earth from a great distance. Her act of digging could be interpreted as accidentally accessing this observational technology and being psychologically overwhelmed by the overview effect, the cognitive shift in awareness reported by astronauts when they see the Earth from space, isolated and fragile against the blackness. The warnings she receives are also telling. She is frequently instructed to be careful with the food and cooking implements of the star people. In some stories, when she tries to cook a meal, her actions have strange and dangerous consequences, perhaps a pot boiling over uncontrollably or food behaving in unexpected ways. This could be a garbled account of trying to perform mundane tasks in a microgravity environment, where liquids form floating spheres and heat convection works completely differently without gravity to pull cooler matter down and hotter matter up. The stories also speak of the radical difference in time between the star world and Earth. When the woman finally returns, often by being lowered in a basket or descending a long rope, she discovers that what felt like a single season in the sky was actually many years or even generations on the ground. Everyone she knew is long gone. This is a stunning intuitive grasp of time dilation, a concept from Einstein's theory of relativity, which states that time passes at different rates depending on gravity and velocity. While the ancient tellers of these tales wouldn't have had the mathematics, their stories preserve the core experience of it, that a journey to the stars fundamentally alters one's relationship with time. The culmination of many of these myths is the return, and it is often tragic. The woman's star child, if she has one, may struggle to adapt to Earth's heavy gravity and dense atmosphere, sometimes perishing because it is not suited for this world. This poignant ending suggests an understanding that life is fundamentally shaped by its environment, that a being adapted to the void of space would find our world crushing and toxic. This isn't just fantasy, it's a principle of exobiology. These narratives, repeated across vast distances by cultures with no contact with each other, do more than just spark the imagination. They form a consistent and startlingly technical account of leaving Earth, living in a non-terrestrial environment, and returning changed. They describe the physiological and psychological effects of spaceflight with a narrative precision that seems to stem from observation rather than invention. Whether this is the result of profound shamanic vision, contact with an unknown advanced culture, or simply the human genius for pattern recognition arriving at profound truths through story, the Star Husband tales remain one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that our ancestors may have known far more about the final frontier than we have ever given them credit for. This mastery of the heavens finds its ultimate expression in the story of the demigod Maui, a tale known across the Polynesian Triangle. In one of his most famous feats, Maui is said to have lassoed the sun with a magical rope made from his sister's hair, forcing it to slow its journey across the sky so that his people would have more hours of daylight to fish and dry their crops. While a delightful story of a trickster god, this myth is a brilliant allegory for understanding solar declination, the sun's apparent north-south movement throughout the year. The long days of summer when the sun's path is high and slow are Maui's triumph. The short days of winter when the sun races low across the horizon are the sun escaping his grasp. The myth taught navigators to read the sun's changing position not as a random event, but as a predictable, cyclical journey they could use to gauge their latitude. By knowing which stars should be directly overhead at specific times of year, a navigator could mentally create a celestial grid. If they were too far north or south, the stars and the sun's path would be wrong. Maui's rope is the line of calculated latitude, and his feet is the moment of perfect celestial alignment, a concept every navigator strived to achieve. This intricate knowledge was not stored in books but woven into the very fabric of their oral culture, passed down through chants and stories that functioned as living nautical almanacs. A chant about a specific god might list the stars that rise just before him, effectively encoding the sequence of stars that would appear on the horizon at a particular time and place. The story of the magical fishhook of Maui, with which he pulled islands from the sea, is not just about creation, it is a navigational marker. The hook is often identified with the constellation Scorpius, whose appearance in the evening sky signaled the start of the long-distance voyaging season. The stars were not static pictures but moving guides. Navigators were taught the concept of the star path. They would memorize that a destination island lay directly beneath a specific star when it was at its zenith. To reach it, they would simply steer their canoe to keep that star positioned directly ahead of them throughout the night. As the Earth rotated and that star set, they would then transfer their steering to the next star rising in the same relative position, creating an unbroken celestial highway across the ocean. This required an encyclopedic knowledge of hundreds of stars and their relationships, all memorized through myth and song. The most astounding testament to the accuracy of this star lore is not in the stories themselves, but in the blank space on the map they were used to conquer. The Polynesian migration was the greatest feat of exploration in human history, a deliberate expansion across thousands of miles of open ocean that led to the settlement of hundreds of islands, from tiny atolls to massive landmasses like Aotearoa, New Zealand, and Rapa Nui, Easter Island. This was not accidental drift, it was intentional two-way voyaging. Canoes would travel to newly discovered islands and then return to their origin points to guide others, a process that required an ability to navigate back to a speck of land in an ocean of identical waves with pinpoint accuracy. They used a holistic system called wayfinding, which integrated the stars with the flight paths of birds, the direction of swells, the color of the water, and the types of cloud formations that gathered over distant land. But the stars were the constant, the reliable map that never faded. The myths were the mnemonic devices that made this immense library of knowledge unforgettable, ensuring that the secrets of the stars could survive generations and guide a people to the farthest corners of their world. Now we journey from the vast expanse of the Pacific to the heart of Mali in West Africa, where we encounter perhaps the most controversial and baffling celestial mystery of them all. This is the story of the Dogon people and their extraordinary, seemingly impossible knowledge of the star system Sirius. For the Dogon, Sirius is not just a bright point of light, it is the center of a complex cosmology. Their oral traditions, passed down through generations of spiritual leaders, tell of a tiny, incredibly heavy and dense companion star that orbits the primary star, Sirius A, in a long elliptical path over a period of 50 years. They call this small, dense star Po-Tolo, Tolo meaning star, and Po referring to the smallest known grain, a tiny, fundamental seed. This description is not a vague allusion, it is a remarkably precise astronomical account. The star they describe is Sirius B, a white dwarf. White dwarfs are the incredibly dense, Earth-sized remnants of dead stars, and Sirius B was completely invisible to all human eyes until 1862, when American astronomer Alvin Clark first glimpsed it through a powerful telescope. Its 50-year orbital period was precisely calculated by astronomers much later. So how could a traditional African tribe with no telescopes possess such specific and advanced knowledge about a star that cannot be seen? The most straightforward explanation within their own cultural framework is that this knowledge was given to them. Dogon mythology states that their understanding of the cosmos was delivered long ago by amphibious, fish-like beings called the Namo, who arrived from the Sirius system in a great arc that spun and descended to Earth with great noise and wind. These visitors, described as masters of water and teachers of civilization, are said to have imparted this profound wisdom to the Dogon ancestors. This narrative, of course, invites enormous controversy and speculation. Mainstream academia, led by the anthropologist Walter Van Beek, who studied the Dogon in the 1980s, found no strong evidence of the Sirius tradition being ancient. The prevailing skeptical theory suggests that the knowledge was likely incorporated into Dogon beliefs following contact with Westerners in the late 1920s or 30s, after the properties of Sirius B had been published in astronomical journals and perhaps discussed by missionaries or colonial administrators. However, this explanation is fiercely contested. The French anthropologist Marcel Griaule, who first recorded the Dogon myths in the 1930s and 40s, insisted the knowledge was deeply embedded in their oldest traditions, present in their rituals and sand drawings long before such Western concepts could have reasonably filtered into their remote culture. The descriptions offered by the Dogon go beyond just the existence of a dense companion star. Their myths also speak of a third star in the system, which they call Emya, and even a potential fourth body, suggestions that continue to intrigue astronomers today as we still work to fully understand the Sirius system's complexities. Whether this knowledge came from ancient, indigenous African astronomical techniques lost to time, from contact with another culture, or from a source that challenges our entire understanding of history, the doggone mystery forces a profound question. It compels us to reconsider the depth and sophistication of oral traditions and to acknowledge that the lines between myth and astronomy, between ancient wisdom and modern science, are far more blurred and far more fascinating than we might ever have imagined. While the doggone mystery asks us how ancient people could know about invisible stars, the Babylonians left us undeniable proof of their celestial genius, etched not in oral tradition, but in the cold, hard clay of cuneiform tablets. Among the most extraordinary of these are the Venus tablets of Amasajuka, a collection of astronomical diaries that record the movements of the planet Venus over a 21-year period during the reign of King Amasajuka, around the middle of the 17th century BC. At first glance, these tablets are simply meticulous logs, noting the first and last appearances of Venus as a morning or evening star. But when modern researchers began to analyze the data, they uncovered a sophisticated understanding of planetary motion that seems to defy the era's technological limitations. The true marvel lies in the patterns they discerned. The Babylonians didn't just record data, they synthesized it into a predictable, repeating cycle. They recognized that Venus completes a precise pattern of appearances and disappearances relative to the Sun, and that this entire pattern repeats itself almost exactly every 8 years. This is the 8-year pentagonal cycle. From our perspective on Earth, Venus traces a stunning 5-petaled flower pattern in the sky over the course of those 8 years, returning to nearly the same point in its orbital dance. This 8-year cycle is not a rough estimate, it is a precise celestial clockwork, 5 cycles of Venus's 584-day synodic period, the time it takes to return to the same position relative to the Sun and Earth, adds up to 2,920 days, which is almost exactly 8 Earth years of 365.25 days. The tiny discrepancy amounts to just a few days over 8 years, a margin of error the Babylonians were clearly aware of and accounted for in their long-term predictions. This was more than just observation, it was high-level mathematical astronomy. The scribes who compiled these tablets were working with a complex sexagemal number system, the same base 60 system that gives us our 60-second minutes and 60-minute hours. This system was uniquely suited for astronomical calculations, allowing them to compute fractions and large numbers with an efficiency that a base 10 system struggles to match. They didn't have our concept of gravity or heliocentrism, but through relentless, generation-spanning observation, they deduced the mathematical rules governing the gods themselves. For them, Venus was the goddess Ishtar, a powerful and sometimes capricious deity whose movements were omens of war, famine, or prosperity. A sudden disappearance of Venus could signal the death of a king or the fall of a dynasty. This wasn't superstition, it was a logical conclusion based on a core belief that the macrocosm of the heavens was directly linked to the microcosm of human events. By meticulously tracking Ishtar's movements, they were essentially divining the will of the gods, a practice known as astral divination. The tablets are filled with these omens, each celestial event paired with a prophecy for the land of Akkad. But to achieve this, they first had to know with certainty what the event would be and when it would happen. This practical, theological need is what drove them to such incredible heights of astronomical precision. They weren't just priests, they were the world's first astrophysicists, developing a mathematical framework to predict the behavior of celestial objects. Their work allowed them to create functional calendars, plan agricultural activities, and guide the decisions of kings with a confidence born from mathematical certainty. The Venus tablets stand as a monumental achievement, a bridge between the mystical and the mathematical that demonstrates a human intellect every bit as capable and insightful as our own, simply working with a different set of tools and a different cosmological story to explain the beautiful, predictable clockwork of the sky. But if the Venus tablets show us humanity's patient mathematical observation of the cosmos, the Greek myth of Phaethon presents the absolute antithesis, a story of celestial chaos, a single, terrifying day when the sky itself seemed to break. The tale is one of hubris and disaster. Phaethon, the mortal son of the sun god Helios, seeks to prove his divine lineage. He begs his father for the ultimate privilege, to drive the chariot of the sun across the sky for a single day. Reluctantly, Helios agrees, bound by a sacred oath, but the moment Phaethon takes the reins, he loses control. The divine horses, sensing his weakness, bolt from their ordained path. The chariot plunges too low, scorching the earth and creating the great deserts of Africa, then soars too high, freezing entire regions. To prevent the complete annihilation of the world, Zeus is forced to intervene, striking the boy down with a thunderbolt and sending him plummeting into the river Eridanus. It's a powerful moral fable about not overreaching, but when we peel back the layers of allegory, we find what appears to be a vivid, traumatizing memory of a global cataclysm, a day the sun itself seemed to go mad. The most compelling interpretation points to a massive cometary or asteroidal impact. The description of the event is textbook. The chariot plunging too low, scorching the earth, aligns perfectly with the immense heat blast and firestorm that would follow a large object's atmospheric entry and subsequent impact. The myth specifically mentions Libya being burned barren, which intriguingly corresponds with the vast Sahara Desert. While not caused by a single event, the story could preserve a folk memory of a rapid desertification process triggered by a climatic disaster. The chariot then soaring too high and freezing the world mirrors the other devastating consequence of a major impact: the injection of vast amounts of dust and debris into the upper atmosphere, blocking sunlight and triggering a sudden, prolonged impact winter. The thunderbolt from Zeus that finally stops the chaos could be the impact event itself. A sudden, terminal explosion felt as a divine strike. The fall of Phaethon into the river Eridanus, which the Greeks associated with the river Po in northern Italy, is particularly telling. This region is home to the Campo del Cielo, a massive field of iron meteorite fragments, the result of a tremendous impact event estimated to have occurred over 4,500 years ago. The connection is astonishing. The myth seems to pinpoint not just the type of event, but a potential geographical location for its aftermath. Beyond an impact, the myth also contains clues that point to a period of extreme solar activity. The description of the sun chariot veering wildly and scorching the earth is a chillingly accurate depiction of the effects of a powerful coronal mass ejection or a super flare from the sun. Such an event would send a wave of charged plasma and radiation washing over the planet, devastating electrical systems, which of course didn't exist then, but more importantly, superheating the atmosphere and potentially igniting global wildfires. The Greeks described the earth burning and the seas boiling away, which aligns with the atmospheric heating and violent geomagnetic storms such a solar event would cause. The horses of the sun, representing the raw power of the star, becoming uncontrollable, is a perfect metaphor for the sun's magnetic field becoming unstable and unleashing its fury. Even the intervention of Zeus with his thunderbolt finds a parallel, as the charged particles from a solar storm can trigger massive lightning discharges in the atmosphere. This myth could therefore be a double-edged record, preserving the memory of two different but equally terrifying celestial events, an impact from beyond and an eruption from our own star. Perhaps the most profound layer of the Phaethon myth is its description of planetary instability. Some researchers, expanding on the theories of Immanuel Velikovsky, suggest the story is a fragmented memory of a time when the solar system itself was not yet settled. In this reading, the sun chariot is not our star but a planetary body, a massive comet or a rogue planet that moved on a highly elliptical and catastrophic path through the inner solar system. Its close approach to Earth, appearing as a second wild sun in the sky, would have created the perception of the sun itself going off course. Its gravitational pull could have torqued the planet, shifting its axis or disrupting its rotation, leading to the described phenomena of the Earth scorching and freezing in rapid succession. The thunderbolt of Zeus that destroys it could represent the electrical discharge or massive impact that ultimately broke this intruder apart or forced it into a new, stable orbit. This interpretation transforms the myth from a local disaster story into a cosmic one, a memory of a time when the gods, the planets truly did war in the heavens, and the stability of the sky itself could not be taken for granted. The lasting power of the Phaethon story lies in its visceral, global scale of destruction. It is a myth about the end of the world, averted only by the most drastic means. It speaks to a deep-seated human anxiety that the cosmic order is fragile, that the sun might not rise in the same way tomorrow, and that forces beyond our comprehension or control could unleash at any moment. It is the nightmare version of the celestial clockwork the Babylonians worked so hard to document, a chilling reminder that the heavens hold not just wonder but also apocalyptic fire. This fascination with cosmic time is hardly a modern invention. Long before we formulated the Big Bang Theory or calculated the life cycles of stars, ancient cultures were grappling with these very same questions of universal origins and endings, developing their own complex models for understanding the vastness of time. And few cultures thought bigger or with more intricate detail than the ancient seers of India. Their vision of cosmic cycles, known as the yugas, presents a timeline so staggeringly immense that it seems to dwarf human comprehension, yet it resonates with a startling and almost prophetic alignment to the scales of modern cosmology. At the heart of this system are the four primary yugas, each a distinct age with its own defining characteristics and duration. These are not random periods but a precise, descending and then ascending sequence of spiritual and moral quality. They begin with the Satya Yuga, a golden age of truth and enlightenment that lasts for 1,728,000 years. This is followed by the Treta Yuga, the Silver Age of Sacrifice, which lasts for 1,296,000 years. Next comes the Dvapara Yuga, the Bronze Age of division and conflict, lasting 864,000 years. And finally, we arrive at the Kali Yuga, the Iron Age of discord and ignorance, the current age we are said to be in, which has a duration of 432,000 years. These four ages together make one Mahayuga, or Great Yuga, a full cycle of creation and dissolution that totals 4,320,000 years. But the scale expands even further. 1,000 of these Mahayugas constitute just a single day of Brahma, the creator god, known as a Kalpa, a period of 4.32 billion years. The universe itself is said to exist for the lifespan of Brahma, which is 100 of his divine years, a time span that translates to a number so vast it is essentially incomprehensible, 311,040,000,000,000 human years. Now, these numbers are not arbitrary. The system is built on a precise and sacred ratio, 4, 3, 2, 1. The durations of the yugas descend in this exact proportion, and their sum, 10, signifies a completed cycle. This mathematical elegance suggests the ancient rishis were not just storytellers but cosmic accountants, developing a numerical theology to quantify the rhythm of existence itself. But what could possibly have inspired such a specific and grandiose conception of time? The answer may lie not in theology but in the observed heavens. The key number underpinning the entire system is 432. The Kali Yuga is 432,000 years. Multiply that by the ratios and you get the other yugas. 1,000 Mahayugas, each of 4.32 million years, gives you the 4.32 billion year Kalpa. This number, 432,000, appears in myths and sacred texts across the ancient world, from Babylon to Scandinavia. It is a number deeply connected to astronomy, specifically to the slow, wobbling rotation of the Earth's axis known as the precession of the equinoxes. The precessional cycle, the time it takes for the Sun's position at the spring equinox to complete a full circuit through the 12 constellations of the zodiac, is approximately 25,772 years. This is often rounded to 26,000 years or, in some ancient calculations, divided into 12 ages of about 2,160 years each. When you take this precessional number of 25,920 years and multiply it by a factor that converts it into a much larger, more mythically significant cycle, you arrive at numbers in the hundreds of thousands. The Kali Yuga's 432,000 years is exactly 100 times the duration of the astrological age of 2,160 years. This is not a coincidence. It suggests the Yuga system was an attempt to encode the grandest possible celestial clock, the slow, majestic turning of the entire heavens, into a spiritual framework. The declining morality of each successive Yuga could then be seen as a metaphor for the shifting spiritual energies associated with the Sun's passage through different zodiacal constellations over these vast eons. This astronomical connection leads us to an even more profound parallel, the concept of the galactic year. Our solar system doesn't sit still. It orbits the supermassive black hole at the center of our Milky Way galaxy. One complete orbit, one galactic year, takes the Sun and its planets approximately 225 to 250 million years. Now, consider the day of Brahma, the Kalpa, which lasts 4.32 billion years. That period is remarkably close to 20 galactic years. This alignment is too precise to be easily dismissed. It implies that the ancient seers, through some combination of deep meditation, meticulous observation, or received knowledge, conceived of a timescale that aligns with the actual orbital period of our entire solar system around the galactic core. They were thinking not in terms of human history or even planetary cycles, but on a truly galactic scale. The Kalpa could be interpreted as the lifespan of a galaxy, or at least a major phase in its evolution, from its birth in a cloud of gas and dust to its eventual quietus. The Yuga system also presents a dynamic view of the universe that is cyclical, not linear. Unlike the Abrahamic concept of a single creation and a final apocalypse, the Hindu model proposes an endless series of universes being breathed out and inhaled back in by Brahman, the ultimate reality. Each universe lives, dies, and is reborn in an eternal rhythm. This bears a striking resemblance to certain speculative models in modern cosmology, such as the conformal cyclic cosmology proposed by physicist Roger Penrose, which suggests that the universe undergoes endless cycles of big bangs and big crunches, or expansions into heat death, with the end of one universe seeding the beginning of the next. In this model, the transition between cycles is marked by a specific conformal symmetry, a resetting of the cosmic clock. The Hindu concept of pralaya, the dissolution that occurs at the end of a kalpa, where the universe is reabsorbed into its causal state before being projected anew, is a breathtakingly similar idea. It is a vision of a universe that is both ancient and forever young, dying continually to be reborn, a concept that finds echoes in the most advanced physics of our time. The Yugas, therefore, are more than just a mythic calendar. They are a sophisticated philosophical and cosmological model that sought to reconcile the moral decay and renewal of human civilization with the observed and calculated cycles of the cosmos. It is a system that places our brief, flickering human existence within a context of almost unimaginable grandeur, suggesting that the rise and fall of empires and even of species are but minor notes in a symphony that plays out over billions of years. Where the Hindu and Maya visions present a universe of immense but orderly cycles, the Norse imagination conjured an apocalypse of magnificent and terrifying finality. This is Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods, a prophecy not of peaceful renewal but of catastrophic, world-ending violence that paves the way for a fragile new beginning. The myth is a detailed and unflinching account of the end. The bonds of kinship shatter as brother turns against brother. The sun and the moon are devoured by monstrous wolves, plunging the world into an abyssal darkness. The stars themselves vanish from the heavens. The earth quakes so violently that all fetters are broken, freeing the terrible wolf Fenrir and the cunning trickster Loki. The world serpent Jörmungandr rises from the depths of the ocean, spewing venom and flooding the land as it surges ashore. A ship made from the uncut fingernails of the dead Naglfar sets sail, carrying a crew of giants to the final battlefield. The gods, led by Odin, arm themselves for one last, hopeless stand. They fight and they fall. The All-Father is consumed by Fenrir. Thor slays the world serpent but stumbles only 9 paces before succumbing to its venom. The world itself is consumed by fire and then submerged beneath the boiling sea. Yet from the waters, a new, green world eventually emerges, and a handful of gods and 2 human survivors repopulate the earth. This is far more than a simple tale of divine punishment. When we analyze its specific, visceral imagery through an astronomical lens, a stunning possibility emerges that the Viking seers were encoding observations of profound cosmic disasters, events that could have shaped their world and their deepest fears. The central, most chilling event of Ragnarök is the extinguishing of the heavenly lights. The sun is swallowed, turning black, and the stars fall from the sky. This is a perfect, dramatic description of a total solar eclipse, an event that would have been utterly terrifying to any ancient culture. The Norse, living at a high latitude, would have experienced these phenomena with particular intensity. The sudden, unnatural darkness in the middle of the day, the appearance of the sun's corona looking like a black disk wreathed in unearthly fire, the stars becoming visible in the daytime sky. This exact sequence aligns perfectly with the myth. The concept of the sun being swallowed is a universal human description for an eclipse found in cultures worldwide, but the Norse took it a step further, personifying the mechanism of destruction as the wolf's girl, who eternally chases the sun, finally catching his prey. This suggests not just a single observed event, but a deep understanding of the cyclical, predictable nature of eclipses, framed within their worldview of an inevitable, prophesied doom. Yet the prophecy speaks of more than just darkness. It describes stars falling. This points directly to a spectacular meteor shower, or even a more intense asteroidal bombardment. The image of stars dislodging from the fixed firmament and streaking toward Earth is the classic perception of meteors burning up in the atmosphere. A particularly intense storm, with thousands of visible meteors per hour, would truly look like the very fabric of the cosmos was unraveling. The myth gains even more traction when we consider the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which proposes that a fragmented comet or asteroid struck the North American ice sheet around 12,900 years ago. This event is theorized to have triggered a sudden, 1,000-year return to glacial conditions, extinguishing megafauna like the mammoth and severely testing human survival. For the ancestors of the Norse, whose oral traditions may stretch back to this period, such a cataclysm would have been seared into cultural memory as the ultimate Fimbulwinter, the 3-year winter that precedes Ragnarök, a long, brutal period of cold and darkness caused by atmospheric debris blocking the sun. The falling stars of Ragnarök could be the poetic memory of the bolides from such an event lighting up the sky before the global winter set in. The most dramatic terrestrial event in the prophecy is the rising of the world serpent Jörmungandr from the ocean. This massive creature, so long it encircles the globe and bites its own tail, is a symbol of the ocean's boundless and chaotic power. Its violent emergence, causing the seas to rear up and flood the land, is a textbook description of a mega-tsunami, the kind generated by a significant oceanic impact or a massive submarine earthquake. The serpent's venom, which it spews across the land and sea, could symbolize the toxic aftermath of such an event, the salinization of the land by seawater, the potential release of hydrogen sulfide from the disturbed depths, or simply the poison of death and ruin that follows a flood. This imagery is a powerful allegory for the absolute loss of control over the maritime environment that was so central to Norse life. Their entire world was the sea. To imagine it turning against them in the form of its greatest monster was the ultimate expression of cosmic terror. Beyond these specific events, the entire narrative of Ragnarök can be seen as an allegory for precession, the slow, 26,000-year wobble of the Earth's axis. This gradual shift causes the Sun's position at the equinox to move through the 12 constellations of the zodiac. The final battle on the field of Vigridr could represent the Sun's passage into a new astrological age, with the death of the old gods symbolizing the decline of the celestial order associated with the previous age. The eventual submersion of the world in water is a key symbol for the age of Pisces, while the new world that emerges, green and fertile, resonates with the characteristics of the incoming age of Aquarius. This interpretation views Ragnarök not as a single, violent event, but as a slow, cosmic transition, a changing of the god in the celestial hierarchy that was condensed into a dramatic, narrative form by the Norse poets. What makes Ragnarök so uniquely compelling is its stark, unsentimental embrace of destruction as a necessary precursor to renewal. Unlike apocalypses that promise paradise for the faithful, Ragnarök promises only struggle, death, and the end of all things known. Even the gods are not spared. Their deaths are not noble sacrifices guaranteeing a better fate for humanity. They are simply part of the inevitable cycle. The new world that emerges is not a perfect paradise, but simply a new beginning, free from the strife of the old one, with the same potential for both good and evil. This reflects a profoundly realistic and cyclical view of the universe, one borne by a people intimately acquainted with the harsh realities of nature, where winter must always come before the spring, and where great losses often precede fragile new gain. The prophecy was not a source of despair, but of grim resolve. It taught that even in the face of certain doom, one must arm oneself, stand tall, and fight with courage, because that is what is right, not because victory is assured. This ethos is the ultimate secret the stars held for the Norse. Their astronomical observations, whether of eclipses, meteors, or precessional shifts, were filtered through a cultural lens that valued courage above all else, resulting in the most powerful and enduring vision of the end of the world ever conceived. But perhaps no ancient culture wove the tapestry of sky and earth as completely or as deliberately as the Egyptians, and nowhere is this more brilliantly illustrated than in the myth of the god King Osiris. His story is one of murder, dismemberment, and miraculous resurrection, but to view it solely as a theological narrative is to miss its true, staggering scale. For the Egyptians, the story of Osiris was written not just on papyrus, but across the entire night sky, with the constellation of Orion serving as his eternal, celestial body. The myth itself is a foundational drama. Osiris, the wise and benevolent ruler of Egypt, is murdered by his jealous brother Set, who tricks him into a coffin, seals it shut, and casts it into the Nile. His grieving wife and sister, Isis, searches the length of the river, eventually finding the coffin lodged in a tamarisk tree in the distant land of Byblos. She returns his body to Egypt, but Set discovers it and, in a fit of rage, dismembers the corpse into 14 pieces, scattering them across the Nile Delta. Undeterred, Isis and her sister Nephthys search for every fragment, reassembling Osiris and using her magical prowess to temporarily resurrect him long enough to conceive their son, Horus. Osiris then descends to rule the underworld as the Lord of the Dead and the Judge of Souls, forevermore associated with resurrection and eternal life. Now let's look upward. The Egyptians explicitly identified Osiris with the constellation we know as Orion, which they called Sahu. They saw in its distinctive pattern of 3 stars forming a belt the precise image of their resurrected god, standing triumphant in the heavens. This connection was not a passing poetic fancy, it was a cornerstone of their state religion and the very architecture of their civilization. The pyramid texts, the oldest known religious writings in the world, carved inside the pyramids of 5th and 6th dynasty pharaohs, are filled with this astral correlation. One spell, Utterance 466, directly addresses the deceased king, stating, "You are this great star, the companion of Orion, who traverses the sky with Orion. You ascend from the east of the sky, being renewed in your due season and rejuvenated in your due time. The king doesn't just go to the stars, he becomes Osiris Orion, ensuring his own cycle of death and rebirth will mirror the celestial one." This astronomical link is made even more concrete through breathtakingly precise architectural alignments. The 3 pyramids at Giza are arranged on the ground in a pattern that perfectly mirrors the 3 stars of Orion's belt. This is not a rough approximation. The relative sizes of the pyramids and their slight offset from a perfect line correspond exactly to the relative brightness and alignment of the stars Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintoka. Furthermore, the southern shaft of the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid was meticulously aligned to point directly toward the center of the constellation of Orion, providing a direct conduit for the soul of the pharaoh to ascend and join his celestial counterpart. The Milky Way, which arcs across the sky, was seen as the celestial manifestation of the Nile River, the great life-giving highway of Egypt. Just as Osiris's coffin was cast into the earthly Nile, his stellar form was forever placed in the celestial Nile, completing the perfect mirroring of heaven and earth. The most profound secret encoded within this myth, however, is a silent, slow-moving clock known as precession. The Earth wobbles on its axis over a cycle of approximately 26,000 years, causing the position of the stars to shift gradually over centuries. This means the precise location of Orion in the sky changes over vast stretches of time. The Egyptians, through millennia of meticulous observation, were almost certainly aware of this phenomenon. The myth of Osiris's dismemberment into 14 pieces is a potential key to understanding this. Some researchers, like Robert Bovell, have proposed that the 14 fragments could represent the 14 key stars of the Orion constellation, and their scattering could be a mythological metaphor for the slow, precessional drifting of these stars over time. The myth, therefore, becomes more than a static map. It becomes a dynamic record of celestial movement, preserving the knowledge that the heavens themselves are in a constant, if imperceptibly slow, state of flux. This understanding of precession had a direct impact on their sense of time and destiny. The Egyptians believed in Zep-Tepi, the first time, a golden age when the gods ruled on earth and the cosmic order was perfectly established. They associated this primordial era with a specific celestial alignment, likely when Orion occupied its lowest point in its precessional cycle before beginning its long, slow ascent. The entire goal of their funerary religion, the pyramids, the mummification, the spells, was to ritually return the deceased pharaoh to that moment of Zep-Tepi, to restart the cosmic cycle and guarantee not just his personal resurrection, but the renewal of the entire cosmic order. The myth of Osiris and its Orion connection was the master code for this entire process. It linked the fate of the individual to the destiny of the stars, the political stability of the kingdom to the unerring motions of the cosmos, and the hope for life after death to the eternal, predictable cycle of the constellation rising in the east, just as the sun did each morning. It was their ultimate statement that death was not an end, but a transition, a journey to become a star, and to dwell forever in the immutable yet ever-changing fields of heaven. While the Norse saw an inevitable apocalypse written in the stars and the Egyptians a map to the afterlife, the ancient Chinese observed a different kind of drama, one of heartbreaking separation and enduring love, etched into the very fabric of the Milky Way. This is the poignant legend of the Weaver Girl and the Cowherd, a story that has been told for over 2,600 years, and one that hides an astonishingly precise understanding of celestial mechanics within its romantic poetry. The tale centers on two stars, Zhai Nu, the Weaver Girl, identified as the brilliant blue-white star Vega in the constellation Lyra, and Nu Lang, the Cowherd, identified as the golden star Altair in Aquila. The story tells us that the Weaver Girl was a divine seamstress, daughter of the Jade Emperor, who wove the clouds and rainbows in the heavens. She fell in love with a mortal cowherd, and they married, living in blissful happiness. But their neglect of their duties, her weaving and his herding, angered the Jade Emperor, who forcibly separated them, banishing them to opposite banks of the Great Silver River, what we know as the Milky Way. There they remain, eternally pining for one another, allowed to meet only once a year on the 7th night of the 7th lunar month, when a bridge of magpies forms across the stellar river to reunite them. It's a timeless narrative of love, loss, and the relentless passage of time, but to view it merely as a folktale is to overlook its true brilliance as an ancient astronomical almanac. The most immediate and stunning accuracy lies in the myth's core geography. The positions of Vega and Altair in the night sky are exactly as described. They shine with exceptional brightness on opposite sides of the Milky Way's great band of light. To the naked eye, the Milky Way does indeed appear as a wide, shimmering, uncrossable river dividing the summer sky. The ancient Chinese didn't just notice this, they quantified the separation with their own unique system. They measured angular distances in Du, a unit approximately equal to 1 degree. Remarkably, the angular separation between Vega and Altair is about 34 degrees, and Chinese astronomical records consistently refer to the distance between the two lovers as being 35 Du, a measurement of breathtaking accuracy for the time. This isn't a rough guess, it's a precise calculation, suggesting the use of advanced observational tools like the armillary sphere or cross staff long before such instruments were formally documented in the West. The annual reunion on the 7th day of the 7th month is the heart of the Kixi festival, and this date is far from arbitrary. It is a direct reflection of the Earth's orbital position relative to these stars. In the early autumn skies of the Chinese lunar calendar, the Milky Way arches high overhead, and the positions of Vega and Altair shift to their highest point in the night sky. This specific celestial configuration makes the river appear most prominent, and the two stars seem to draw closer to its banks, setting the stage for their mythical crossing. The Magpie Bridge itself is a beautiful piece of celestial poetry that may have an observational basis. On the appointed night, the Cygnus constellation, which lies directly between Vega and Altair, rises high into the sky. Its central stars form a prominent asterism known as the Northern Cross. To an imaginative ancient observer, the long, sweeping line of this cross, stretching across the dark rift of the Milky Way, could easily be seen as a bridge of birds spanning the heavenly river, connecting the two lonely lovers for their brief, cherished night. Perhaps the most profound astronomical insight, however, is hidden in the descriptions of the lovers themselves. The Weaver Girl, Vega, is consistently described as brilliant, shimmering, and blue-white in the myths. Altair, the Cowherd, is often described as golden or yellowish. This is not poetic license, it is an accurate naked eye observation of their stellar spectral classes. Vega is a hot, young Type star that burns with a distinct blue-white light, while Altair is a Type star as well, though it can appear more yellowish to some observers, especially when low on the horizon and affected by atmospheric scattering. The myth even encodes their relative brightness. Vega is the 5th brightest star in the night sky, significantly more luminous than Altair, which ranks 12th. This difference is reflected in their characters. The Weaver Girl is a divine goddess, while the Cowherd is a humble mortal, their luminous disparity written into the very hierarchy of the heavens. But the legend's genius extends beyond static positions into the realm of deep time and motion. The story's central tragedy is the relentless, uncrossable distance between them. Intriguingly, modern astronomy reveals that this mythical separation is not just an illusion of perspective, it is a physical reality. Vega and Altair are not gravitationally bound, they are independent stars hurtling through space on different trajectories. Vega is moving toward our solar system, while Altair is moving away from it. In a very real, cosmic sense, they are indeed forever being pulled apart, never to be truly united. The Magpie Bridge is a momentary, miraculous alignment from our earthly viewpoint, but the fundamental truth the myth preserves is one of irreversible cosmic divergence. This suggests the ancient astronomers may have possessed a subtle, long-term understanding of proper motion. The slow, relative movement of stars over centuries, observable only through generations of meticulous record-keeping, comparing star positions against the fixed background of the Milky Way. The enduring power of the Weaver Girl and cowherd myth lies in this seamless fusion of precise science and profound human emotion. It served as a multifaceted tool, a calendar marking a specific agricultural turning point in the year, a navigational aid for travelers who used these bright stars to orient themselves, and a moral lesson about duty and devotion. But most importantly, it was a powerful mnemonic device. By embedding complex astronomical data within an emotionally resonant and unforgettable story, ancient Chinese scholars ensured that this critical knowledge of the heavens, the positions, colors, movements, and cycles of these key stars, would be preserved and passed down accurately through countless generations, long before the invention of the printed word. It represents a pinnacle of human ingenuity, demonstrating that our ancestors didn't just look at the stars, they listened to them, and they heard a story of love written in the immutable laws of physics. From the celestial love story written in the Chinese Milky Way, we journey now to the stepped pyramids and dense jungles of Mesoamerica, where another kind of deity slithered through both myth and sky. Across the great civilizations of the Aztecs and the Maya, a powerful figure recurs, a being of immense wisdom and cosmic power, the feathered serpent. To the Aztecs, he was Quetzalcoatl. To the Maya, he was Kukulkan. This was no ordinary god. He was a fusion of the earthbound and the celestial. The serpent representing the terrestrial world and its raw power, the feathers symbolizing the heavens and the spirit's ability to ascend. But this captivating image is far more than a symbolic deity. When we trace the path of the feathered serpent through the myths and the monumental architecture left behind, we uncover a sophisticated astronomical codex, one that demonstrates a mind-bendingly precise understanding of planetary motion and cosmic cycles. The most profound connection lies in the serpent's intimate relationship with the planet Venus. For the Maya, Kukulkan was not just associated with Venus. He was the evening star aspect of the planet, a deity whose cyclical disappearance and reappearance was an event of immense portent. The Maya tracked Venus with a precision that seems almost supernatural. Their famed Dresden Codex contains pages dedicated solely to Venus tables, predicting its movements over a 584-day synodic cycle with an error of just 1 day in 500 years. This wasn't mere observation, it was high-level mathematical astronomy. The myth of Kukulkan's journey mirrors this cycle. His descent into the underworld represents the planet's inferior conjunction when it passes between the Earth and the Sun, vanishing from the night sky for a period of time. This was seen as a dangerous, liminal period where the god was battling the forces of darkness. His triumphant reappearance as the morning star was his victory and rebirth, an event that often dictated the timing of warfare and religious ceremonies. The feathered serpent, therefore, was the personification of this predictable yet powerful celestial rhythm, a god whose very life was a mathematical equation of death and resurrection written in the stars. This astronomical identity is physically manifested in one of the most breathtaking architectural phenomena on Earth, At the Great Pyramid of Chichen Itza, known as El Castillo, a stunning visual effect occurs during the spring and autumn equinoxes. As the sun sets on these 2 days of perfect solar balance, the stepped corners of the pyramid cast a series of triangular shadows down the northern staircase. These shadows align to form the undulating body of a massive serpent, which appears to slither down from the heavens to connect with a stone serpent head carved at the base of the balustrade. This is not an accident of design, it is a deliberate, stone-calculated marvel of archaeoastronomy. The pyramid itself is a physical calendar. Its 4 sides have 91 steps each, which, added together with the shared platform at the top, equals 365, 1 step for each day of the solar year. The pyramid's alignment ensures that this serpentine spectacle only occurs on the equinoxes, marking the precise moments when day and night are of equal length, and the serpent god announces the change of seasons. This fusion of architecture, solar cycle, and mythology created a public, awe-inspiring spectacle that cemented the authority of the priest astronomers and demonstrated their godlike command over the very forces of nature. But the knowledge encoded in the feathered serpent myth extends beyond solar years and Venus cycles. The symbolism of the serpent itself is a multi-layered astronomical metaphor. Its ability to shed its skin made it a universal symbol of renewal and rebirth, perfectly mirroring the cyclical nature of all celestial bodies. The sun, the moon, the planets, which die each day or each year only to be reborn. Furthermore, some researchers propose that the serpent's form slithering across the sky may be a representation of the Milky Way itself. At certain times of the year, the Milky Way arches across the heavens in a shape that could be interpreted as a great luminous serpent. The feathered aspect could then symbolize the individual stars and nebulae within the galactic stream. This interpretation transforms Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl into nothing less than a personification of our entire galaxy, a deity whose scale encompasses the entirety of the known cosmos. The mythological narratives surrounding these gods further reinforce their cosmic roles. The Aztec legend tells of Quetzalcoatl's self-sacrifice in the ancient city of Tollan. After being tricked into disgrace, he immolates himself on a pyre, and his heart ascends into the sky to become the morning star, Venus. This story is a powerful allegory for the planet's conjunction cycle. The pyre is the sun, which Venus approaches too closely from our perspective, seeming to be consumed by its fire, only to be reborn on the other side. Another Maya myth describes the Hero Twins, whom we've already met, defeating the gods of the underworld and subsequently being elevated to the heavens, with one twin becoming the sun and the other becoming the planet Venus. This directly links the feathered serpent's narrative to the larger cosmic struggle between light and darkness, order and chaos that was central to Mesoamerican cosmology. These stories were the software that ran on the hardware of the pyramids, the memorable narratives that packaged complex astronomical data into a form that could be understood, revered, and passed down through generations. The feathered serpent was the ultimate teacher, and his lessons were written not on parchment, but in the very movement of the planets and the alignment of the stones, a testament to a civilization that looked at the stars and saw a divine, feathered snake weaving the fabric of time itself. From the Mesoamerican feathered serpent, whose movements mirrored the planet Venus, we venture even further back in time to the very cradle of civilization itself, Mesopotamia, where the Sumerians left behind one of the most perplexing and audacious documents in all of antiquity. This is the Sumerian King List, a clay tablet that shatters our conventional understanding of history and time. It presents a record of kings who ruled the land, but it does so in 2 distinct parts. First, it details a period before the Great Flood, stating with absolute authority, "After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu." It then lists a series of 8 kings who reigned for periods that are not just long but utterly fantastical. Elulim ruled for 28,800 years. Alauga ruled for 36,000 years. Then, after the flood, the list continues with reigns that are still lengthy by our standards, often centuries long, but they gradually shorten to more historically plausible durations. For centuries, scholars dismissed the pre-Diluvian section as pure myth-making, a way for later dynasties to legitimize their rule by connecting themselves to a godlike, antediluvian past. But what if these numbers are not random boasts? What if they are a complex code, a mythological framework for preserving a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics and cosmic time scales that the Sumerians observed in the heavens above them? The most compelling astronomical interpretation suggests these immense reigns are not records of human lives, but rather representations of planetary orbits or celestial cycles, using the language of kingship as their vessel. The key to unlocking this code lies in the Sumerian sexagesimal number system, a base 60 framework that we still use today for measuring time and angles. This system was inherently mathematical and astronomical in its purpose. When we take these colossal reigns and divide them by the number 360, a central number in their astronomy representing the ideal year or a full circle, we often get much more recognizable figures. For instance, the reign of the king Enuma was 43,200 years. Dividing this by 360 gives us 120, a number of great significance. One of the most important periods in Mesopotamian astronomy was the Sar, a cycle of 3,600 years. Some researchers propose that these long reigns are actually recorded in Sar units. The king Dumuzi, the shepherd, is said to have ruled for 36,000 years. That is exactly 10 Sar cycles. This translation from mythical reign lengths to astronomical cycles suggests the king list is less a historical document and more a veiled almanac, using the metaphor of divine kings to record the slow, majestic turning of the celestial spheres. This idea connects powerfully to the concept of precession, the same slow wobble of Earth's axis that we saw encoded in the Hindu yugas and the myth of Osiris. The precessional cycle takes approximately 25,772 years for the sun's position at the equinox to complete a full circuit through the 12 constellations of the zodiac. The Sumerian number for precession appears to have been close to 25,920 years. Look back at those kingly reigns. The total sum of the reigns of the 8 antediluvian kings is 241,200 years. Dividing this total by the number of kings, 8, gives an average reign of 30,150 years, a figure remarkably close to the precessional period. Even more strikingly, the reign of the 7th king, Enuma, was precisely 21,000 years. In some interpretations of ancient cosmology, this number is half a precessional cycle, marking a significant turning point in the Great Year. The king list, therefore, might be a grand countdown to the Great Flood, not as a local Mesopotamian event, but as a cosmic reset point tied to the precessional ages. Another fascinating theory posits that each king might represent a specific celestial body. The list states that kingship descended from heaven, and it moved from one city to another after each immensely long reign. This could be a poetic description of the shifting gravitational dominance or astrological ages associated with different planets as they move through their vast orbital cycles. The planet Saturn, for instance, was associated with kingship and time in many ancient cultures. Its orbital period is 29.5 years. If a year in the antediluvian context was not a solar year but a Saturnian year, then a reign of 36,000 years would translate to a much shorter, though still immense, period of time that might hold other astronomical significance. The list may be a way of ranking the planets in order of their perceived importance or orbital periods, assigning each a reign of divine authority over the cosmos. The sudden shortening of reigns after the flood could then symbolize a catastrophic event that disrupted the old cosmic order and brought time itself, at least from a human perspective, into a new and accelerated rhythm. The Sumerian king list challenges us to read it not as a flawed history, but as a work of profound astronomical poetry, a complex cipher left by ancient sky watchers who chose to encode the deepest secrets of the universe in the only language they believed was worthy of such grandeur, the language of gods and kings. Yet if the Sumerian king list encodes the vast, slow clockwork of the cosmos, the Greek imagination held a memory of a far more violent and chaotic period in the heavens. We now turn to the foundational myth of their entire pantheon, the Titanomachy, the epic, decade-long war between the old gods, the Titans, and the new, the Olympians. On its surface, it's a classic tale of a generational coup, a son overthrowing a tyrannical father. But when we listen to the specific, cataclysmic imagery of the conflict, a far more ancient and astronomical story emerges, one that seems to recount the violent processes that sculpted our early solar system. The narrative begins with the tyrannical rule of Cronus, who, fearing a prophecy that he would be overthrown by his own child, devours each of his children at birth. His wife, Rhea, saves the youngest, Zeus, by tricking Cronus into swallowing a stone instead. The hidden Zeus grows to maturity and forces his father to disgorge his siblings, who emerge fully grown and ready for war. What follows is not a simple skirmish but a universal cataclysm. The Olympians, led by Zeus, make their stronghold on Mount Olympus, while the Titans, led by the mighty Atlas, rally on Mount Othrys. For 10 years, the battle rages, shaking the very foundations of the universe. The descriptions are not of clashing swords, but of world-ending forces. The Titans rip up entire mountains and hurl them at the Olympians. The heavens groan and the earth screams as the landscape is torn asunder. The conflict is finally decided when Zeus unleashes his ultimate weapons, the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires, the hundred-handed ones. The Cyclopes forge for him his iconic thunderbolts, while the Hecatoncheires, each with 50 heads and 100 arms, pelt the Titans with 300 rocks at once, burying them under a mountain of stone. Now let's read this myth not as theology but as planetary science. The reigning Titan, Cronus, who devours his children, can be seen as the sun, or more specifically, the gravitational dominance of a central stellar body in a young, unstable solar system. His act of swallowing his children is a powerful metaphor for accretion, the process where a larger planetary body absorbs or captures smaller planetesimals and protoplanets, clearing its orbital path. This was a violent and chaotic period in our solar system's history, often called the Late Heavy Bombardment, where gravitational resonances between the giant planets flung countless smaller bodies inward, leading to a hail of impacts on the inner worlds. The stone that Rhea gives Cronus, which he swallows instead of Zeus, could represent a planetesimal that was captured into orbit, becoming a moon or simply being absorbed, while the true threat, Zeus, remained free to grow in power. This hidden threat, Jupiter, the largest planetary body, eventually grows powerful enough to challenge the existing order. Its immense gravity would have fundamentally destabilized the orbits of other large bodies, just as Zeus forces the regurgitation of his siblings, effectively freeing them from the gravitational pull of the central system and allowing them to establish their own independent orbits. The 10-year war itself, with mountains being hurled through the void, is a near-perfect allegory for this period of intense bombardment, where planetary embryos and large asteroids collided, merged, and were shattered in a chaotic dance of gravity and impact. The Titans, the old gods, represent the earlier generation of planetary bodies, perhaps even a hypothetical fifth gas giant or larger super-Earths that were ejected from the solar system or consumed during this violent restructuring. The decisive intervention of the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires offers the most compelling evidence for an astronomical reading. These primordial beings, imprisoned by Cronus at the beginning of time, are forces of incredible elemental power. The Cyclopes, who forge the thunderbolt, represent the immense electrical discharges and plasma phenomena that would have been common in the dusty, charged environment of the early solar nebula. Lightning of unimaginable scale is known to play a role in the accretion of matter, but the hecatoncures are even more specific. These hundred-handed ones are described as hurling vast volleys of rocks. This is a stunningly accurate image for the asteroid belt itself, a vast collection of rocky debris, a remnant of the planetesimals that failed to accrete into a planet due to Jupiter's gravitational influence. In this allegory, the 300 rocks they throw at once are the countless asteroids within the belt, and their action of burying the titans under a mountain symbolizes the final outcome of this cosmic war, the establishment of a stable asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a permanent monument to the violent process that cleared the solar system and left the Olympian planets Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune in their stable, current orbits. The eventual imprisonment of the Titans in Tartarus, a deep abyss as far below the Earth as the sky is above it, completes the metaphor. This is the freezing, dark outer reaches of the solar system, the Kuiper belt and the Oort cloud, where the remnants of the solar system's early formation, the defeated Titans, were flung and remain in cold storage far from the light of the sun. The Titanomachy, therefore, is not just a story of divine succession. It is a creation myth of the highest order, preserving the memory of the most formative and violent period in our solar system's history, a time when the gods themselves, the planets, battled for supremacy, and the very structure of our cosmic neighborhood was forged in fire and thunder. Yet if the Greek and Sumerian myths preserve memories of our own solar system's violent past, the ancient Hindu seers turned their gaze outward, contemplating a cosmos of literally infinite scope. Their philosophical and mythological texts present a vision so vast it seems to defy the limitations of the ancient world, a concept that has only found its echo in the most cutting-edge theories of modern physics. This is the idea of the multiverse, and it finds one of its most poetic and profound expressions in the image of the universe emerging from the pores of Vishnu. In the Bhagavata Purana, it is said that the preserver god Vishnu rests upon the cosmic serpent Anantashesha in the primordial ocean of milk. As he sleeps, a lotus flower grows from his navel, upon which the creator god Brahma resides, ready to begin the work of creation. But the true marvel is described as the divine sage Narada journeys through the cosmos. He approaches Vishnu and sees something impossible. Upon the god's skin, he sees not just the stars of our own universe, but entire other universes, each with its own Brahma, its own galaxies, its own laws of physics, all swirling into existence from the infinitesimal pores of the sleeping deity, only to be reabsorbed moments later. This is not a single creation event, but a continuous, breathing process of infinite universes being born and dying with every moment. The sheer scale is incomprehensible, a fractal reality where each pore contains a cosmos, and each atom within that cosmos might itself contain another. This astonishing concept finds a parallel in another strand of Hindu thought centered on Brahma, the creator. Here, the entirety of our universe is not a physical emanation, but a mental projection. It is said that the universe is the dream of Brahma. All that we see, all that we experience, the galaxies, the planets, our own lives and histories, are the fleeting thoughts and images playing out in the mind of the divine dreamer. When Brahma eventually awakens, the universe will dissolve back into the unmanifest, only to begin again when he next sleeps. This idea transforms the cosmos from an inert object into a living, conscious process, a narrative woven from divine imagination. The philosophical implications are staggering. It suggests that the fundamental nature of reality is not matter, but consciousness itself. The laws of physics are not cold, external rules, but the internal logic of a god's dream. This provides a fascinating answer to one of the deepest questions in cosmology. Why is the universe comprehensible at all? If it is a thought, then it is inherently structured by the principles of logic and reason, making it accessible to other minds like our own that are fragments of that same divine consciousness. When we place these ancient ideas alongside modern multiverse theory, the parallels are nothing short of breathtaking. The concept of Vishnu's pause mirrors the bubble universe model derived from eternal inflation theory. This model proposes that our entire observable universe is just one bubble in a vast, ever-expanding cosmic foam. The larger multiverse is like a pot of boiling water where new bubbles, each with their own unique physical constants and laws, constantly nucleate, expand, and sometimes even collide. Vishnu's body represents the inflationary field, and each pore is a point where the energy of that field fluctuates, birthing a new bubble universe into existence. The idea of these universes constantly appearing and disappearing aligns perfectly with the quantum mechanical principle that vacuum fluctuations can spontaneously generate particles, and on a grander scale, entire universes. The Hindu vision simply scales this quantum weirdness up to a cosmic, and indeed divine, level. Similarly, the notion of Brahma's dream finds a startling counterpart in the holographic principle and simulation theory. The holographic principle, a concept in string theory, suggests that our three-dimensional universe, including all the information within it, might actually be a projection from a two-dimensional surface at its boundary, much like a hologram. Our reality, in this view, is a kind of illusion, a complex encoding of information. This resonates powerfully with the idea that the universe is a mental construct, a projection from the mind of Brahma. Furthermore, some interpretations of quantum mechanics, particularly the participatory anthropic principle, suggest that the universe only takes a definite form when it is observed. Without a conscious observer, reality remains a blur of probabilities. This casts us not as passive inhabitants of a pre-existing world, but as active participants in its creation, co-dreamers with Brahma, bringing the solidity of the world into being through the act of perception. The cycle of Brahma's days and nights, each lasting 4.32 billion years, mirrors modern speculative ideas about the cyclic nature of the multiverse, where universes are born from the collapse or collision of previous ones in an endless cycle. What is most remarkable is the method of this discovery. The ancient rishis did not arrive at this breathtaking cosmic model through telescopes or particle accelerators. They used the tools of deep meditation and philosophical inquiry, turning their consciousness inward to explore the nature of reality itself. Their methodology was based on the idea that the macrocosm of the universe and the microcosm of the human mind are mirrors of each other. By understanding the depths of their own consciousness, they believed they could understand the structure of the cosmos. This introspective approach led them to a conclusion that our own external science is only now, millennia later, beginning to tentatively approach, that the universe is not a singular, lonely accident, but one of countless possibilities in an infinite, breathing, dreaming multiverse, and that the line between the physical and the mental, between the dreamed and the dreamer, is far more porous than we could have ever imagined. While the Greeks and Hindus envisioned cosmic wars and dreaming gods, the Celts looked to the heavens to master the rhythms of the earth itself. Theirs was a world intimately tied to the land, and their survival depended on an exquisite understanding of the seasons. But this knowledge wasn't stored in dry almanacs. It was woven into the very fabric of their most powerful myths, transforming stories of terrifying goddesses and vibrant nature spirits into a sophisticated, mnemonic astronomical calendar. At the heart of this system were the four great fire festivals, Imbolc, Beltane, Lugnasad, and Samhain. These weren't arbitrary dates on a calendar. They were the precise cross-quarter days, the midpoints between the solstices and equinoxes, and their associated myths are a masterclass in encoding celestial events into unforgettable narrative. Consider the Cailleach, the divine hag of Scottish and Irish lore. She is not merely a monster, she is the personification of winter itself, a geological force who shapes the mountains with her staff and freezes the ground with her touch. Her myth is a precise solar allegory. She is said to rule from Samhain, celebrated on November 1st, to Beltane on May 1st, This period exactly marks the dark half of the year in the Celtic world when the sun is at its weakest. The stories describe how she is reborn as an old woman at Samhain and grows progressively younger throughout the winter, only to be transformed at Beltane into a beautiful maiden or else imprisoned until the sun wanes again. This narrative perfectly tracks the sun's journey. At the winter solstice, the sun is at its lowest point, seemingly old and dying, but after the solstice, the days begin to lengthen. The sun is reborn, growing stronger and younger each day until it reaches its peak of power at the summer solstice. The Elich's story is a mythic graph of solar declination, a way of remembering that even in the depths of winter, the sun's rebirth is already underway. Conversely, the spirit of the light half of the year finds its expression in the Green Man, a deity of foliage and vibrant growth whose face sprouts leaves and vines from mouths and eyes. He is the force that awakens at Beltane when the Elich is overthrown and reaches his zenith at the summer solstice. His visage, carved on medieval churches but far older in origin, is more than a decorative motif. He represents the explosive, almost violent fecundity of nature under the strong summer sun. The growth of the plants he embodies was meticulously observed by Celtic druids, who understood that specific stages of growth were triggered by the sun's specific height in the sky and the length of daylight. The Green Man's gradual emergence from the stone is a metaphor for this precise phenological cycle, his face becoming more obscured by leaves as the days lengthen, signaling the optimal times for planting, growth, and eventually harvest. This celestial choreography extended beyond the sun to the moon, which held immense importance for timing specific ceremonies, particularly those related to fertility and sovereignty. The myth of the union between the great Irish king and a sovereignty goddess, often appearing as a hag who transforms into a beautiful woman upon being rightly chosen, is deeply tied to lunar cycles. The goddess often presents the king with a cup of red ale, a symbol of both earthly kingship and cosmic order. This ritual of sacred marriage was likely performed at specific lunar phases, perhaps the full moon, to ensure the fertility of the land and the legitimacy of the ruler. The transformation of the hag into a maiden mirrors the lunar cycle itself. The waning moon, the old hag, giving way to the new and then full moon, the beautiful maiden. By linking political power to these astronomical events, the Celts rooted their social order in the immutable cycles of the cosmos, ensuring that a king's rule was seen as divinely sanctioned by the heavens themselves. Even the stars played their part in this mythic calendar. The Pleiades star cluster, known to many cultures, held particular significance. In Celtic lore, its heliacal rising, its first appearance in the dawn sky after a period of invisibility, was a critical marker. This event, which occurs in the northern hemisphere around May, was intricately linked to the festival of Beltane. The rising of the Pleiades signaled that the light half of the year had firmly taken hold, that the threat of deep frost was past, and it was time to drive livestock to their summer pastures. This practical agricultural instruction is embedded in the myth. The cluster is sometimes associated with a group of otherworldly women or a mother goddess, and their appearance in the sky was seen as a blessing and a signal to begin essential seasonal tasks. The myth provided a story that made this complex astronomical observation, which required careful pre-dawn watching, unforgettable to an entire culture. This fusion of stellar movement, mythic narrative, and agricultural practice demonstrates a holistic science where no part of the cosmos was disconnected from life on the ground. For the Celts, the sky was not a separate realm. It was the ultimate clock, the divine storybook, and the practical farmer's guide, all woven together in a tapestry of terrifying hags, vibrant green men, and starry-eyed goddesses. Leaving behind the Celtic fire festivals and their terrestrial rhythms, we venture into the stark, beautiful landscapes of the American Southwest, where the Navajo or Dene people have woven a celestial tapestry of breathtaking complexity. Their star stories are not merely decorative myths, They are a fundamental pillar of a holistic world view where the cosmos, the earth, and human existence are inseparable, each constantly influencing the other through a delicate web of relationships and balance. At the heart of this system is the concept of Haja, a state of beauty, harmony, and order that is the ultimate goal of all life. The stars, in their predictable, graceful motions, are the ultimate expression of this cosmic Haja, and the Navajo constellation myths serve as both a map and a manual for aligning human life with this perfect celestial order. This begins with their creation story, the Dene Bahane adjective, which describes a series of emergences through different worlds. The fifth world, or glittering world, is our present reality, and it was carefully structured according to a celestial blueprint. The holy people placed major constellations in specific, sacred positions to hold up the sky and organize the cosmos. The most crucial of these are the Nahukos, the circumpolar stars. To the Navajo, these stars that never set below the horizon are not random points of light. They are the central fire around which the entire celestial hogan or dwelling rotates. Nahukos Biaj, the northern male, is our Polaris, the fixed center, but he is not alone. He is accompanied by Nahukos Bi adjective Aad, the northern female, which is the bowl of the Little Dipper, and their two children, the guardians of the dawn and the evening. This familial grouping is the immovable pivot of the universe, and their eternal, unwavering presence is what allows for the predictable movement of all other stars. This is a profound astronomical insight. By identifying the north celestial pole as the stable center of rotation, the Navajo developed a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics long before Western astronomy formalized the concept. Their myths explain why the sky turns, attributing it to the steadfastness of these divine celestial beings, providing a rational, albeit spiritual, model for the observed phenomenon of the stars circling a fixed point. Beyond this central axis, the Navajo sky is populated by constellations that are not formed by connecting stars, but by the dark spaces between them. This is one of their most unique and brilliant contributions to celestial knowledge. Where Western tradition sees a hunter in the stars of Orion, the Navajo see Atse ets adjective o acute zi acute, the first slender one. His belt is formed not by the three bright stars, but by the dark nebulae within the Orion constellation. His head is the star Betelgeuse, but his purpose is not to hunt. He is a sacred figure who marks the beginning of the Navajo year. His appearance in the evening sky signals the start of the season of stories, a time when knowledge is passed down and the community turns inward. This practice of negative space astronomy demonstrates an observational sophistication that rivals any ancient culture. They were not just looking at the light, they were perceiving the structure within the light, recognizing that the dark clouds of the Milky Way were not empty voids but significant features of the cosmic landscape. This celestial map is brought to life through the epic journey of the Hero Twins, Naoy Iakut adjective Nizgani and Tobajishchini, who traveled to the sun god Joakut Hon adjective Iakut to obtain the weapons needed to rid the world of monsters. Their path to the sun is described in the myth with specific directional and celestial markers. They are instructed to follow the Hastian Sik adjective Ai adjective Iakut, the man with legs ajar, which we know as the constellation Corvus. This specific star pattern, positioned near the horizon, acts as a signpost, its orientation indicating the correct path to take. The entire journey is a detailed allegory for navigating by the stars, where each constellation is not just a picture but a directional guide, a timing mechanism, and a spiritual entity all at once. The monsters they slay are not just fantasy beasts, they represent chaos, imbalance, and the destructive forces of nature. By placing their victory in a celestial context, the myth teaches that overcoming chaos requires aligning one's actions with the orderly, predictable motions of the heavens. The true genius of the Navajo system is its practical application. The position of the constellation He, the Pleiades cluster, is critically important. Its heliacal setting in the spring, its last appearance in the western sky at dusk, was the absolute signal to complete the planting of corn. If the corn was not in the ground by the time He disappeared, it was considered too late for a successful harvest. This is because its disappearance coincides with the end of the frost season and the beginning of the reliable summer rains in the southwest. This is not folklore, it is precise, climate-specific phenology, using a celestial event to time a crucial agricultural activity with pinpoint accuracy. The myth surrounding He adds another layer. The cluster is often called the seed jar stars, and stories tell of them being placed in the sky to remind people of the importance of storing seeds and planting on time. The myth ensures the survival of the knowledge, making the technical observation unforgettable. Perhaps the most stunning example of their advanced understanding is found in their knowledge of binary star systems. The star we call Polaris, the North Star, is not a single star but a triple star system. While the two smaller companions are invisible to the naked eye, the primary star and its main binary partner can, under perfect conditions, be discerned by those with exceptional eyesight. The Navajo names for Nahuko's Biage often carry a sense of duality or companionship, suggesting an ancient awareness that the central pivot of their universe was not a single, lonely sentinel, but a pair, a constant companionship at the heart of all things. This subtle detail points to generations of meticulous, naked-eye observation, a tradition of watching so deep and so sustained that it perceived a truth about the cosmos that would remain hidden to European astronomers until the invention of the telescope. For the Navajo, the stars were alive, they were family, and they were teachers. Their myths provided a complete system for living in harmony with a universe that was both spiritually profound and physically precise, a perfect embodiment of Haujor written in the language of the night sky. Yet this myth is far more than a simple celestial chase. It's a sophisticated astronomical clock. The key to its precision lies in the timing of their appearances. Orion, the mighty hunter, is predominantly a winter constellation, dominating the night sky from November through February in the northern hemisphere. Just as the winter chill begins to relent, the constellation of Scorpius starts to crest above the southeastern horizon at dawn. By the time the heat of summer arrives, Scorpius commands the evening sky, and Orion has completely vanished, having set with the sun. This is the moment of the myth's climax, the Scorpion's victory, with the hunter utterly absent from the night. Their eternal dance is a perfect allegory for the concept of celestial opposition. The two constellations are placed on nearly opposite sides of the celestial sphere. When one is high in the sky, the other is inevitably below the horizon, locked in an endless game of cosmic hide and seek dictated by the Earth's orbit around the sun. The ancient Greeks, through patient observation, codified this precise seasonal relationship into a dramatic story, creating an unforgettable mnemonic. A storyteller could point to the rising scorpion in the spring and know that the time for winter tales of the hunter had passed and that the hot, dry season was now at hand. This narrative transformed the abstract passage of time, marked by the slow procession of the stars, into a relatable and thrilling seasonal drama, ensuring that this crucial astronomical knowledge would be remembered and passed down through generations. But this celestial knowledge goes far beyond simple stargazing. The emu in the sky acts as a sophisticated, multi-layered ecological calendar. When the emu first appears in the evening sky during the early Australian autumn around April, its posture is key. It is seen standing with its body low and its head upright, a formation the stories interpret as the emu running. This celestial signal coincides perfectly with the actual behavior of real emus on the ground, as this is their mating season. The males are beginning to build their nests and the females are preparing to lay their eggs. For Aboriginal people, this was a critical time marker. The emu's appearance in this specific configuration was a clear, unmissable sign that it was time to start collecting emu eggs, a vital and nutritious food source. As the weeks progress and the Earth continues its orbit, the perspective from the ground shifts. By June and July, the dark nebula Emu appears to change its position, seeming to stretch its legs and lower its head towards the horizon. In the rich oral tradition, this is the emu sitting down on its nest, which is exactly what the male emus are doing in the real world at this time, diligently incubating their eggs. This period was traditionally a time of respect and restraint, a time to avoid disturbing the nesting birds to ensure future generations. The final, most dramatic shift comes around November. The emu in the night sky has now completely inverted from its original position. It appears to be standing on its head with its body stretching high into the Milky Way. This corresponds with the end of the egg-laying season on Earth. The eggs have hatched, the chicks have fledged, and the opportunity to gather this food source is over for another year. The myth, through the changing posture of the celestial emu, provided a reliable, multi-seasonal guide for sustainable hunting and ecological management, ensuring the emu population was never overharvested. This seamless integration of astronomy with biology and ecology reveals a holistic science that saw no separation between the heavens and the Earth, understanding that the rhythms of the stars were directly mirrored in the behaviors of the animals and the responsibilities of the people. Across the globe, from the Dreamtime of Australia to the pyramids of Egypt, we find civilizations encoding celestial truths within their sacred stories. But our next journey takes us to the heart of the ancient Persian Empire, to a myth so dazzling and technologically precise that it seems to leap from the pages of science fiction. This is the story of King Jamshid and his magnificent flying throne, a divine chariot that traversed the heavens, and it presents us with one of the most compelling cases for advanced ancient knowledge hidden in plain sight within a legendary narrative. The myth, preserved in the epic Shahnameh written by the poet Ferdowsi, tells of Jamshid, a legendary king of the Pashtadian dynasty, a ruler bestowed with divine grace and wisdom. His most famous possession was not a sword or a crown, but his wondrous throne, the Takht-i-Jamshid. This was no ordinary seat of power. It was described as a magnificent platform or chariot that could fly through the air, powered not by horses or magic words, but by the command of the king himself. The stories recount how Jamshid would ascend into the sky aboard this vessel, surveying his entire kingdom from a heavenly vantage point in a single day. He observed the activities of his people, dispensed justice from above, and demonstrated his God-given right to rule by performing what could only be described as a miraculous feat of aerial surveillance and rapid travel. On the surface, it's a classic trope of royal propaganda, a claim of divine authority. But when we dissect the specific language and the described capabilities of this throne, a far more intriguing interpretation emerges, one that transcends mere symbolism and points toward a sophisticated understanding of concepts we would today call orbital mechanics, anti-gravity, and celestial navigation. Let's consider the description of its operation. The throne is said to have been propelled through the air, not by wings like a bird or a mythical beast, but by its own inherent power moving at the king's will. This suggests a form of propulsion that is internal, controlled, and seemingly reactionless. It doesn't push against the air, it simply moves. To a modern ear, this sounds less like magic and more like a theoretical technology such as anti-gravity or inertia negation, concepts that are the holy grail of advanced physics today, ideas that would allow a vehicle to overcome Earth's gravity without the fiery exhaust of rockets. The ability to hover and observe an entire kingdom from above is particularly telling. Persia was a vast empire. To survey it all in a single day from a high altitude would require a vehicle capable of achieving a stable, high-altitude position, perhaps even a low orbital path. The description mirrors the experience of an astronaut in orbit, who witnesses multiple sunrises and sunsets in a single day as they circle the globe, seeing vast swaths of territory passing beneath them. Jamshed's throne in this light begins to sound less like a magical carpet and more like a description of a reconnaissance satellite or a space plane, a vehicle designed for observation and command and control from a supreme height. This interpretation is bolstered by the profound astronomical knowledge the Persians undoubtedly possessed. They were master astrologers and astronomers with names like Omar Khayyam revolutionizing calendar systems. The city of Persepolis itself, which means throne of Jamshed, is architecturally aligned with celestial events. Could the myth of the flying throne be the poetic encapsulation of this advanced understanding? The throne's journey across the sky might represent the calculated path of a celestial body, or perhaps even a metaphorical model for understanding planetary motion. The king, as the central authority figure, could personify the sun, with his throne being the vehicle that carries it on its daily journey across the sky. This would align with the name Jamshed itself, which is often linguistically and mythologically linked to the sun, or Yima in older Avestan texts. His flight would then be an allegory for the solar cycle, a fundamental clock around which all ancient calendars and agricultural societies were built. Yet the technological interpretation remains irresistibly compelling. The descriptions bear a startling resemblance to later, and often disputed, accounts of ancient flying machines like the Indian Vimanas described in texts like the Mahabharata. The concept of a king using such a vehicle for governance, to see all, to know all, to administer justice from an unimpeachable vantage point, is a powerful metaphor for the godlike perspective that such technology would grant. It represents the ultimate expression of power, not just over people, but over the very laws of nature. The myth could be a cultural memory of a lost technology, a remnant of a golden age of knowledge that was later romanticized and mythologized when the original principles were forgotten. Alternatively, it might not be a memory of a past technology, but a prophetic vision or an intuitive grasp of a future one, a conceptual blueprint born from a deep understanding of cosmic principles. Whether interpreted as an allegory for the sun, a metaphor for astronomical knowledge, or a startlingly accurate description of advanced technology, the myth of Jamshed's flying throne serves a crucial purpose. It encodes the idea of a higher perspective, both literally and philosophically. It teaches that true leadership and wisdom come from seeing the bigger picture, from understanding how all parts of a system connect, be it a kingdom, an ecosystem, or a solar system. The throne is the vehicle for this enlightenment, a symbol of humanity's eternal aspiration to ascend, to overcome earthly limitations, and to view the world not as a collection of disjointed parts, but as a single, interconnected whole, just as the astronauts of our era have described the profound overview effect of seeing Earth from space. The Persians, through this enduring myth, may have preserved a seed of that cosmic consciousness, a memory of a time when seeing the world from the heavens was not just a dream, but a king's divine right. And from the Persian vision of a king surveying his domain from the heavens, we travel now to the high mesas of the American Southwest, to a people whose entire existence is a prayer for balance with the cosmos. The Hopi, whose name itself means peaceful people, possess a cultural memory and a cosmological tradition that is among the most profound and precise on Earth. Their prophecies are not vague predictions of doom, but a detailed, cyclical understanding of world ages, each punctuated by celestial signs and a call for humanity to choose a path of harmony or face the consequences of disharmony. At the heart of this wisdom is a staggering command of astronomy, woven so deeply into their myths and rituals that it becomes a living science, a way of navigating both the spiritual and physical universe. The foundation of everything is the Hopi creation story, which describes a series of emergent worlds. We currently live in the fourth world, Tu-Wakachi, and each previous world was destroyed due to humanity's corruption and forgetfulness of the Creator's laws. This is not merely a spiritual allegory, it is a cosmological model that finds eerie parallels in modern science. The description of the end of the third world, for instance, speaks of a great flood. While this is a common global myth, the Hopi narrative includes specific details: a period of volcanic activity, the sky darkening, and the people fleeing to safety in red boats. This sequence of events aligns remarkably well with the hypothesis of a cometary impact or a massive volcanic eruption triggering a climatic shift and rising sea levels, a cataclysm that would have been recorded in the oral histories of survival. The emergence into the fourth world was guided by celestial markers. Their divine helper, Mosor, gave them a prophecy and a set of instructions tied to the heavens. They were to migrate until they found the center of the world, a place indicated by specific astronomical alignments. This journey was not a random wandering, it was a celestial navigation project across a continent guided by the stars. This deep connection is physically embodied in their sacred rock art, particularly the famous Hopi Prophecy Rock. This petroglyph is not a simple drawing, it is a complex cosmological diagram. It depicts two main paths for humanity. The upper path shows a figure connected to a celestial body, often interpreted as the sun or a star, walking in harmony and balance. The lower path shows a figure veering away from this spiritual center, leading to a series of catastrophic endings. Most significantly, the diagram is punctuated by circles that represent not just spiritual stages but specific celestial events. Many Hopi elders and researchers believe these circles correspond to the appearances of certain comets or the cycles of Venus, acting as warning signs or confirmations along the prophetic timeline. The entire petroglyph is a stone-born codex, a permanent reminder that human destiny is inextricably linked to the cycles of the cosmos. Central to their astronomical practice is the meticulous observation of the horizon. The Hopi are master horizon astronomers. From fixed points on their high mesas, they have watched the sun's shifting rising and setting points for centuries, using these movements to create an incredibly accurate agricultural and ceremonial calendar. They don't just note the solstices, they track the sun's journey to its furthest points north and south, understanding the subtle nuances of its path. This knowledge dictates the timing of everything from planting beans and corn to the holding of their most sacred Kachina ceremonies. The soil ceremony held at the winter solstice is a powerful example. It is a ritual to ceremonially turn the sun back on its path towards summer, a collective act of faith and science designed to ensure the sun's return and the continuation of life. This isn't superstition, it is a participatory science based on generations of confirmed observation that the sun does, in fact, begin its northward journey again after this date. But their gaze extends far beyond our sun. The Hopi possess a sophisticated understanding of planetary cycles, particularly that of Venus. They refer to it as Palavar, and they know it as both the morning and evening star. Their ceremonial calendar is intricately tied to its appearances and disappearances. The timing of the important Pawamu ceremony, the bean dance, is often calibrated with the reappearance of Venus as the morning star. This requires advanced calculation, as Venus's synodic cycle, its rhythm of visibility, is complex, taking 584 days to complete. The Hopi, without written tables, have internalized this cycle through generations of oral tradition and observation, integrating it into the very heartbeat of their spiritual life. This knowledge allows them to predict its movements with accuracy, seeing its return not as a random event but as a predictable, sacred moment of renewal. Most astonishing, however, are the Hopi prophecies regarding the end of the current fourth world and the transition to the fifth. These are not Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, but a sequence of signs, many of which are explicitly celestial. The prophecies speak of a blue star that will appear in the heavens, a sign that the great purification is near. While some interpret this as a spiritual metaphor, others see it as a prediction of a specific astronomical event, such as the appearance of a bright comet with a blue-tinged coma or even a supernova. They also foretell a time when the dance of the sacred stars will be disrupted. This could be interpreted as an understanding of precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that gradually changes the positions of the stars over millennia, or perhaps a prophecy of a celestial near miss or impact that would literally alter the sky. The most famous and debated sign is the prophecy of the gourd of ashes, which would fall from the sky, boiling the waters and scorching the land, a thing that would bring a disease for which there is no cure. To many, this is a chillingly precise description of a nuclear explosion and its resultant fallout, a technological cataclysm they foresaw through a spiritual lens centuries before its invention. These prophecies are a warning system written in the language of astronomy, urging humanity to recognize the signs of imbalance and return to a path of respect for the Earth and the cosmos. For the Hopi, the sky is not a separate reality. It is the ultimate moral barometer, reflecting the state of the human heart and offering, for those who know how to read it, a map back to harmony. Yet where the Greeks saw a chariot plunging from its path, the Norse envisioned a far more primal and relentless celestial pursuit. This is the chilling prophecy of Ragnarök, where the monstrous wolf Skirl eternally chases the sun, finally catching and devouring it, while his brother Hati does the same to the moon, plunging the world into an abyss of darkness before the final battle begins. It's a terrifying image of cosmic apocalypse, but embedded within this dramatic end times narrative is a remarkably sophisticated understanding of solar mechanics, one that transforms a monster into a complex astronomical metaphor. The most immediate and powerful interpretation of Skirl's hunt is that of a solar eclipse. For the Norse, living in the high latitudes where the sun's presence is a fragile and cherished thing, the sudden, unnatural blackening of the sun in the middle of the day would have been a moment of pure terror. The myth captures this experience with visceral accuracy. The sun isn't just blocked, it is swallowed by a wolf, a creature of insatiable hunger and primal fear. This description aligns perfectly with the visual phenomenon of a total solar eclipse, where the moon's disk completely covers the sun, leaving only the wispy, fiery tendrils of the corona visible around a perfect circle of blackness. To an ancient observer, this would indeed look like a dark, gaping maw consuming the source of all light and life. The myth doesn't stop there, it provides a mechanism. Skirl isn't a random monster, he is perpetually chasing the sun, and the eclipse is the moment he finally catches his prey. This reflects a deep, observational understanding that eclipses are not random acts of capricious gods, but predictable events tied to the specific, repeating paths, the orbits of the sun and moon. The Vikings were skilled navigators who used the sun for direction, and their very survival depended on reading the sky. Their seers would have noted the patterns, recognizing that these terrifying events occurred at regular intervals. Hence the wolf is always chasing, and his success, while dreaded, is part of a known celestial rhythm. Beyond the singular event of an eclipse, the myth of Skirl can be seen as a grand allegory for the solar cycle itself, particularly the long, dark winters of the far north. In the depths of a Scandinavian winter, the sun appears weak, low on the horizon, and present for only a few fleeting hours. It truly seems as if the forces of darkness are gaining on it, threatening to pull it down below the world entirely. The relentless chase of Skirl embodies this annual struggle between light and dark, summer and winter. His eventual victory at Ragnarök is the ultimate winter, the Fimbulwinter, a 3-year period of endless cold and darkness that precedes the end of the world. This aspect of the myth served as a powerful cultural story to explain and contextualize the harsh reality of their environment. It wasn't just a tale of doom, it was a way of understanding the seasonal death and rebirth of the world, with the promise that after Ragnarök, a new, green world would emerge from the waters, and the sun would be reborn from the devoured one, just as it is reborn each morning after the darkness of night. Perhaps the most astonishing interpretation pushes this ancient insight into the realm of fundamental cosmic forces. The image of one body perpetually chasing another across the sky is a beautiful, intuitive personification of gravity. Skirl's pursuit of the sun mirrors the moon's gravitational dance with our planet, an invisible force that keeps it in a stable orbit, forever falling toward Earth but never colliding thanks to its forward momentum. The myth captures the essence of this orbital mechanics, the constant pull, the eternal chase. On an even grander scale, our entire solar system is engaged in a similar dance. Our sun, and by extension Skirl chasing it, is orbiting the supermassive black hole at the center of our Milky Way galaxy. This galactic orbit takes an incomprehensible 225 million years to complete. The apocalyptic imagery of the wolf finally catching the sun could be a mythological nod to the ultimate fate of our star, billions of years from now, when the sun expands into a red giant and ultimately collapses, effectively ending its life cycle in a final, consuming act. The Norse poets, through their potent symbolism, managed to encode concepts of orbital mechanics and stellar life cycles into a story of a wolf and its prey, demonstrating a profound, intuitive grasp of the dynamic and often violent relationships that govern the cosmos. This layered reading of the myth as eclipse, as seasonal cycle, and as gravitational dance reveals the Norse not as simple fatalists awaiting doom, but as keen cosmic observers who used the power of story to process and preserve their understanding of the heavens. The wolf Skirl is more than a monster, he is a teacher. His eternal chase across the sky is a lesson in the predictable patterns of nature, the delicate balance of opposing forces, and the ultimate truth that even the greatest lights in the universe are subject to immutable physical laws. It is a testament to their genius that they could look at the perfect, life-giving orb of the sun and see within its brilliant light the shadow of the wolf that forever runs behind it. After the chilling Norse vision of a wolf devouring the sun, we find a gentler, yet no less profound, celestial rhythm in the warm sands of ancient Egypt. Here, the daily drama of the sun's disappearance and return was not a story of predation, but one of divine birth and rebirth, orchestrated by the magnificent sky goddess Nut. Her body, elongated and graceful, is the very vault of the heavens, her fingertips and toes touching the four corners of the earth, her spine the shimmering path of the Milky Way. Each evening we witness the central act of this eternal play. The sun god Ra, in his golden bark, sails directly into her waiting mouth. She swallows him whole, and the world is plunged into darkness. For 12 perilous hours he journeys through the labyrinth of her body, the Duat or underworld, facing demons and undergoing regeneration, only to be born anew from her womb at dawn, brilliant and rejuvenated, to sail across her arched body once more. This beautiful, cyclical myth is far more than a charming story. It is a sophisticated cosmological model that encodes a breathtakingly accurate understanding of astronomy, timekeeping, and the very nature of existence. On the most immediate level, the myth is a perfect allegory for the solar cycle itself. The swallowing of the sun represents the sunset, the precise moment the solar disk dips below the western horizon. Nut's body, which arcs across the sky, provides a physical explanation for the sun's path. The Egyptians understood that the sun didn't just vanish, it traveled along a predetermined route through a realm they couldn't see. The 12-hour journey through the Duat corresponds exactly to the 12 hours of the Egyptian night, a period measured by star clocks and water clocks. This wasn't a vague notion of darkness, it was a meticulously quantified unit of time, and the myth provided the narrative framework for it. The perils Ra faces in the underworld battling the serpent Apophis, the embodiment of chaos and dissolution, can be seen as a poetic representation of the sun's perilous journey. Its return was never guaranteed. It was a nightly victory of order over chaos, a concept that mirrored the fragile balance of their own world along the Nile. The genius of the myth deepens when we consider its connection to the concept of the ecliptic. This is the apparent path the sun takes across the sky over the course of a year, a path that passes through the 12 constellations of the zodiac. The Egyptians were keen observers of this path, and Nut's body is often depicted covered in stars. Her swallowing and giving birth to the sun is not just a daily event, but an annual one as well. The specific point on the horizon where the sun sets and rises shifts throughout the year, moving north and south. The myth elegantly accounts for this. The sun is described as entering Nut's mouth at different points throughout the year, a direct correlation to the changing solar declination. Furthermore, the Egyptian calendar was based on the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, which coincided with the annual flooding of the Nile and the New Year. This event, so critical to their survival, was integrated into this celestial mythology, linking the cosmic cycle of Nut and Ra directly to the life-giving cycle of their river and their agricultural year. Perhaps the most profound layer of all is the myth's intuitive grasp of a concept we now understand through physics, that light and time are relative and that a journey through darkness is a transformative process. Ra's voyage through the Duat is not a passive trip, it is a process of rejuvenation. He is aged and weakened by his daily journey across the sky, and the darkness of Nut's body is the crucible where he is made young again. This mirrors the scientific reality of the sun's nuclear fusion process. It is constantly burning its fuel, and from our perspective, it is indeed being depleted, yet it is reborn each day with undiminished power. The myth also touches on the nature of time dilation, a key principle of Einstein's theory of relativity. Time in the Duat is not the same as time on Earth. It is a realm of transformation where the normal rules are suspended. The hours of night feel different, and the sun's journey, while lasting 12 measured hours, is an epic saga. The Egyptians, through the myth of Nut, expressed an understanding that travel through the cosmic underworld, be it the literal night or the fabric of space itself, would fundamentally alter the experience of time and being. This celestial narrative was not confined to papyrus scrolls. It was etched into the very stones of their civilization. The ceilings of royal tombs, like that of Ramesses VI in the Valley of the Kings, are magnificent maps of the heavens depicting Nut's elongated body covered in stars stretching protectively over the world below. The sun's journey is charted with meticulous detail, showing its nightly passage through the 12 regions of the Duat. These were not just decorative artworks, they were functional guides and spells designed to ensure the deceased pharaoh's soul could successfully navigate the same celestial path as Ra, to die and be reborn as a star in the eternal sky. The myth of Nut provided the ultimate comfort and the ultimate promise that death was not an end but a transition. Just as the sun was swallowed each evening only to be reborn at dawn, so too would the human soul be swallowed by the sky goddess and eventually reborn into an eternal afterlife. It was a story that connected the most intimate human fear, the fear of death, to the most dependable cosmic clockwork, offering hope and order in a universe that might otherwise seem chaotic and terrifying. In the graceful form of Nut, the ancient Egyptians found a perfect synthesis of science and spirit, a divine mother whose body was both the clock and the calendar, the tomb and the womb of the sun itself. But perhaps the most enduring mystery woven into this celestial story is the question of the seventh sister. Across countless cultures that tell this tale, from the Greeks to the Aboriginal Australians, the cluster is almost universally known as the Seven Sisters. Yet, when most people look up at the night sky today, they can only clearly make out 6 stars. This discrepancy between myth and naked eye observation is no coincidence. It is one of the most compelling clues suggesting that ancient sky watchers were recording precise astronomical changes over vast stretches of time. The simplest explanation is a natural one: atmospheric conditions and light pollution. One of the stars, Pleione, is a faint, variable star that can be difficult to see without exceptionally clear, dark skies. In our modern world, washed with artificial light, the seventh sister simply fades from view. The myth, in its insistence on 7, may be preserving the knowledge that under ideal, pristine conditions, the kind the ancients took for granted, all 7 are indeed visible, acting as a benchmark for sky quality that has been lost to most of us today. However, a more fascinating theory points to actual stellar evolution. The star we call Pleione is a fast-spinning variable star, known as a gamma Cassiopeia variable, which means it is prone to sudden outbursts and changes in brightness. Astronomical data suggests that around the year 100,000 BC, Pleione was significantly brighter and would have been much easier to see with the naked eye. As millennia passed, its brightness fluctuated. Some researchers propose that a period of dimming around 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, right when many of these myths were being solidified in oral tradition, could explain why the stories lament a lost sister. The Greeks themselves had a specific version of the myth to explain this. One tale says that Electra, the sister, hid her face in grief after the destruction of Troy, founded by her son Dardanus, and thus vanished from sight. This isn't just a poetic flourish, it is a potential cultural memory of a real astronomical event, a dramatic dimming of a star that was witnessed, noted, and woven into the legend for safekeeping, ensuring that the knowledge of its former brightness would not be forgotten. This interpretation transforms the myth from a simple story into a sophisticated long-term observational record. The enduring global theme of a lost or hiding sister suggests that cultures separated by continents and oceans independently noticed this change in the heavens and felt it was significant enough to encode into their most important stories. They were acting as the first astrophysicists, using narrative to document the variable nature of stars long before the invention of the telescope or the photometer. The Pleiades myth, therefore, is far more than a celestial chase. It is a timeless global monument to human curiosity and our deep-seated need to not only observe the cosmos, but to understand its changes and tell its story, ensuring that even the dimming of a single, distant sun would be remembered for thousands of years. Within the vast and intricate tapestry of Hindu cosmology, there exists a myth of astonishing depth, one that condenses the entire scale of the universe into 3 simple yet infinite steps. This is the story of Vamana, the 5th avatar of the god Vishnu, who appeared as a diminutive Brahmin dwarf. The tale begins with a cosmic crisis. The demon king Mahabali, through immense asceticism and piety, had gained dominion over the entire universe, overthrowing even the gods from their heavenly abodes. Yet, unlike many other demons, Mahabali was not purely evil. He was a just and generous ruler. His very virtue made him a different kind of threat, one of cosmic imbalance. To restore order, Vishnu incarnates as Vamana and approaches Mahabali during a grand sacrificial ceremony. The king, true to his generous nature, offers the small Brahmin anything he desires. With a soft but unwavering voice, Vamana makes his request, just 3 paces of land measured by his own 3 steps. Laughing at the modest ask, Mahabali immediately agrees, despite warnings from his wise advisor, Sakracharya. The moment the promise is made, Vamana begins to expand. The charming dwarf transforms into a being of colossal, incomprehensible size. With his first step, he covers the entire earthly realm. With his second, he strides across the entirety of the heavens, claiming all of existence. With no space left for a third step, and with Mahabali humbled and honoring his word, the demon king offers his own head. Vamana places his third step upon Mahabali's head, pushing him down into the netherworld, but grants him a boon for his righteousness: the right to rule the underworld and to visit his subjects on earth once a year, an event celebrated as the festival of Onam. On the surface, this is a powerful allegory about humility, the perils of unchecked ambition, and the supremacy of the divine. But when we measure these 3 steps not with a ruler, but with the lens of astronomy and cosmology, the myth reveals a staggering model of the universe. The 3 steps can be interpreted as a profound allegory for the 3 fundamental levels of the ancient Hindu cosmological model: Buloka, the earthly plane; Bhuvarloka, the atmospheric or intermediary plane, and Svargaloka, the heavenly plane. But this is far more than a simple three-tiered map. The act of measuring implies a desire to quantify, to understand the dimensions of reality itself. The expansion of Vamana suggests a universe that is not static but dynamic and growing. This aligns with one of the most groundbreaking discoveries of modern astrophysics, the expansion of the universe. Edwin Hubble's observation that galaxies are receding from us, that the very fabric of space-time is stretching, finds a poetic parallel in the image of Vamana's form, endlessly expanding to encompass all of creation. His steps are not covering a fixed area, they are measuring an ever-increasing expanse, a concept that would have been utterly revolutionary millennia before the Hubble telescope. The symbolism grows even more profound when we consider the concept of the Trivikrama, which means three strides. This is one of Vishnu's most ancient and enduring epithets. The three strides are often mapped onto the daily path of the sun, rising east, zenith overhead, and setting west. In this reading, Vamana is not just a giant, but a personification of the sun itself, whose light and energy encompass and measure the entirety of our world each day. This interpretation connects the myth directly to the practical, observable astronomy that governed agricultural and ritual life, yet the myth pushes beyond this. The third step, for which there is no room, is the most fascinating. It does not land on a new physical territory, but on the head of Mahabali, a symbolic act that sends him to the netherworld Patala. This could represent the unseeable, the unmeasurable, or the hidden dimensions of the cosmos. In modern physics, we grapple with dark matter and dark energy, invisible components that make up the vast majority of the universe's mass and energy, governing its expansion and ultimate fate. They are there, they exert immense influence, but we cannot see or directly measure them with conventional means. Vamana's third step on Mahabali's head could be a mythological representation of this, the acknowledgement of a vast, influential, yet subterranean or hidden aspect of reality that completes the measurement of the whole. The universe is not just what is visible, it is also defined by what lies beneath in the cosmic depths. This leads us to the most mind-expanding interpretation, that the three steps are an allegory for measuring space-time itself. In the early 20th century, physicists fused the three dimensions of space with the one dimension of time into a single, four-dimensional continuum. Vamana's three strides could symbolize the act of defining this very fabric. The first two steps, covering the earth and the heavens, establish the three spatial dimensions, creating the container of the universe. The third step, which has no place to go in a spatial sense, descends into the realm of the symbolic and the temporal. By placing his foot on Mahabali's head, Vamana is anchoring the measurement of the cosmos not just in space but in time, the cyclical time of kingship, of the annual festival, of the underworld's rhythms. The myth seems to intuit that to truly measure all of creation, you cannot stop at length, width, and height. You must include the fourth dimension of time and the consciousness that experiences it. The demon king, in offering his head, represents the point of observation, the conscious mind that completes the act of measurement by participating in it. This astonishingly prescient idea that the observer is integral to the cosmos finds echoes in the participatory anthropic principle of quantum physics. The story of Vamana is more than a tale of a dwarf who became a giant. It is an ancient, encoded meditation on the very nature of reality, suggesting that the universe is not a static object to be mapped, but a dynamic, expanding, multi-dimensional continuum whose full measure can only be taken when we include the hidden, the temporal, and the very act of observation itself. Long before rockets pierced the atmosphere, the ancient Mesopotamians were already spinning tales of journeys into the celestial realm, and one of the most captivating is the story of Etana, a king who dared to ride an eagle into the heavens. Found on fragmented clay tablets dating back over 4,000 years, this epic begins with a divine council. the sun god Shamash, acting as a celestial judge, intervenes in a feud between a serpent and an eagle. The eagle had broken a sacred oath and attacked the serpent's offspring, and as punishment, Shamash allows the serpent to mutilate the great bird, casting it into a pit to die of thirst and starvation. Etana, a king whose city is stricken with infertility and who has no son to inherit his throne, is then instructed by Shamash to seek out the wounded eagle. He finds the majestic creature, nurses it back to health, and in return asks for the one thing the eagle can provide: access to the heavens where the plant of birth, a divine herb that can grant him an heir, is said to grow. The eagle agrees, and Etana climbs onto its back for a flight that would become one of humanity's first recorded visions of space travel. As the two ascend, the myth provides a startlingly detailed account of their journey, one that reads less like fantasy and more like an observational log. The text describes the Earth undergoing a profound transformation as they gain altitude. It says the land began to resemble a mere hill, and the wide sea looked no larger than a breadbasket. This is a breathtakingly accurate description of the overview effect, the cognitive shift in awareness reported by astronauts when they view the Earth from space for the first time, seeing its fragility and lack of borders. For a culture that had never left the ground, this intuitive understanding that perspective would diminish familiar landmarks into abstract shapes is nothing short of remarkable. The ascent continues in stages. After flying for a second interval, the eagle prompts Etana to look down again. This time, the Earth has shrunk further, appearing like a mere garden plot and the sea like the small irrigation ditch that surrounds it. The myth is carefully quantifying the experience of altitude, breaking the journey into distinct phases that each offer a new, more awe-inspiring perspective, a narrative technique that mirrors the staging of a modern multi-phase rocket launch. The most compelling part of the journey, however, describes a moment of sheer terror that points to an experience of leaving the atmosphere. The text says that after climbing even higher, Etana looked down and was seized by a paralyzing fear. The Earth had vanished from view entirely, replaced by a terrifying, featureless abyss. He cries out to the eagle, begging it to turn back, and the great bird obliges, aborting their mission and returning safely to the ground. This pivotal moment is far more than a simple literary device to create drama. It can be interpreted as a profound description of passing the Kármán line, the official boundary of space 100 kilometers above sea level, where the blue sky gives way to the utter blackness of the void. For the first human to theoretically cross that threshold, the sudden disappearance of the familiar blue atmosphere and the sight of the pure, star-studded blackness of space would indeed be a moment of existential dread, a confrontation with the infinite. The paralyzing fear Etana experiences could be the visceral human reaction to that incomprehensible emptiness, a psychological report from the edge of the known world. Furthermore, his disorientation and the eagle's need to return could symbolize the effects of early zero gravity or the sheer physiological shock of such an environment on an unprepared body. The myth, in its own symbolic language, seems to be preserving our understanding that there is a point in the ascent where the rules of the earthly world cease to apply and a new, terrifying reality takes over. This leads to the question of how such a detailed account could have been conceived millennia before the technology existed to validate it. One possibility is that it represents the culmination of generations of meticulous astronomical observation. The Mesopotamians were master astronomers. They mapped the stars, tracked the planets, and developed sophisticated mathematical models to predict celestial events. This deep familiarity with the heavens could have allowed them to extrapolate, through logic and imagination, what the view from that vantage point might be like. They understood the Earth was part of a larger cosmic system, and the story of Etana could be a narrative expression of that cosmological model. Another, more speculative theory suggests the myth could be a cultural memory of an extreme shamanic or visionary experience. a trance state induced by ritual or substance that produced a potent out-of-body experience interpreted as a flight to the heavens. In this altered state of consciousness, the mind might conjure images of the earth shrinking away, tapping into a deep, intuitive understanding of perspective and scale. Regardless of its origin, the myth of Etana's flight stands as a monumental achievement of the human imagination. It is a testament to our innate desire to ascend, to explore, and to understand our place in the cosmos, a desire so powerful that it could envision the experience of spaceflight and encode its wonders and its terrors in a story of a king and an eagle, whispered for thousands of years before it finally became a reality. But this celestial terror was not without its solution, for the myths tell of a divine archer, Huyi, who was sent by the emperor to resolve the crisis. With his mighty bow, he took aim and shot 9 of the 10 suns from the sky, leaving only one to provide light and warmth for the world. While this is a thrilling tale of a hero saving humanity, we can also read it as a powerful allegory for a dramatic shift in human understanding. The act of shooting down the 9 extra suns could symbolize the moment ancient astronomers finally deciphered the true nature of these terrifying apparitions. Through meticulous observation over generations, they would have realized that the multiple suns were not real, independent celestial bodies, but transient atmospheric illusions. This hard-won knowledge effectively destroyed the false suns, restoring a single, predictable solar order to the heavens. The myth of Huyi, therefore, celebrates not just a mythical hero, but the triumph of reason and careful observation over fear and superstition, a foundational moment where astronomy began to separate itself from pure mythology. Yet there is another layer that points to the stars themselves. Some scholars have proposed that the 10 suns could represent a different kind of celestial phenomenon altogether, a supernova. A sufficiently bright stellar explosion could have appeared as a brilliant new point of light in the sky, perhaps even visible in the daytime near the sun. The story of shooting them down might then be a narrative representation of the supernova's gradual fading over weeks or months, as it dimmed and eventually vanished from view, leaving the familiar sun alone once more. This interpretation transforms the myth into a potential record of a specific, cataclysmic astronomical event, a temporary disruption in the celestial order that was so profound it required a divine explanation. The enduring power of the 10 suns myth lies in its multifaceted nature. It captures the very real terror of witnessing unexplained celestial events, the human desire for a heroic savior, and the slow, collective dawning of scientific understanding that allowed our ancestors to look at the sky not with fear but with a quest for knowledge. It is a story that marks the painful but necessary transition from a world governed by capricious gods to one that could eventually be measured, predicted, and understood. And after witnessing the terror of 10 suns scorching the earth or the dread of a celestial wolf chasing our own, perhaps no ancient fear is more universal or more deeply embedded in our collective memory than that of the Great Flood. From the Epic of Gilgamesh to the story of Noah's Ark, from the Maya to the indigenous peoples of Australia, over 500 distinct cultures across the globe share a strikingly similar story. A cataclysm of water sent by the gods to wipe the slate of humanity clean, survived only by a chosen few. For generations, these were dismissed as mere moral fables, tales of divine punishment for human wickedness. But what if these stories are something far more profound? What if they are a fragmented, global memory of a real, historical catastrophe of such immense proportion that it was seared into the psyche of every surviving culture? And even more intriguingly, what if the cause of this deluge wasn't merely divine anger, but a spectacular and terrifying event written in the stars themselves? The most compelling scientific explanation points the finger squarely at the heavens, a cometary impact. Imagine the sight, a brilliant, terrifying fireball streaking across the sky, far larger and brighter than any star. To an ancient observer, this could only be interpreted as a god or a dragon descending in wrath. The subsequent explosion, if it struck the ocean or an ice sheet, would have been beyond comprehension. The energy released would instantly vaporize billions of tons of water, triggering mega tsunamis hundreds of meters high, traveling at jet speeds across entire ocean basins. The shockwave would circle the globe, generating powerful earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, which many flood myths describe as the fountains of the great deep breaking open. The immense heat would superheat the atmosphere, causing a sudden, global torrential downpour of boiling rain that could last for days, the very windows of heaven described in the Bible being thrown open. This single celestial event perfectly explains the two-source flooding described in so many myths, water rising from the seas below and crashing in from the skies above. The geological evidence for such an event is mounting. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that around 12,900 years ago, fragments of a large comet struck the North American ice sheet, triggering a sudden, 1,000-year return to Ice Age conditions. Core samples from across the globe reveal a layer of sediment rich in nanodiamonds, iridium, and melted glass, all telltale signs of an extraterrestrial impact. This layer coincides precisely with the extinction of megafauna like the mammoth and the saber-toothed tiger, and it marks a period of extreme hardship for human populations. The global distribution of these flood myths, from the Mesopotamian plains to the mountains of Peru, suggests this wasn't a localized disaster. It was a global catastrophe, and its origin was not of this earth. But a comet might not have been the only celestial culprit. Another fascinating possibility lies in a dramatic shift in our planet's own journey around the Sun. Earth's orbit is not a perfect circle. It's an ellipse that changes its shape over a cycle of about 100,000 years, a pattern known as orbital eccentricity. Furthermore, the tilt of Earth's axis wobbles over a 41,000-year cycle. When these cycles align to bring Earth closer to the Sun while its tilt is most extreme, the melting of ice sheets can accelerate dramatically. While this process is usually gradual, it can reach a tipping point. The immense weight of continental ice sheets miles thick actually depresses the crust of the Earth beneath them. When the ice melts rapidly, the land begins to rebound, rising back up like a decompressing sponge. This isostatic rebound can trigger colossal earthquakes and cause sea levels to not just rise, but to surge in chaotic, localized pulses. Coastal settlements would have witnessed the ocean violently and inexplicably reclaiming the land, swallowing entire landscapes in a single lifetime. This wouldn't be a slow, creeping flood, but a rapid, terrifying inundation that would absolutely be perceived as a divine punishment. The myth of the flood could be the cultural memory of the end of the last ice age, a time when the maps of the world were literally redrawn by rising seas, submerging vast coastal plains like Doggerland between Britain and Europe and the Sunda Shelf in Southeast Asia. These lost lands, now underwater, became the archetypal sunken kingdoms and lost worlds of Atlantis that appear in so many traditions, a hazy memory of a fertile homeland swallowed by the vengeful sea due to a shift in the cosmic order. The myths themselves often contain startlingly specific details that support these astronomical theories. The ancient Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, predating the biblical account by centuries, doesn't just speak of rain. It describes the storm god Adad filling the heavens with blackness, and the gods themselves trembling in terror at the unleashed fury, a description that fits the atmospheric chaos and darkness following a major impact event. In the Maya text known as the Popol Vuh, the Great Flood is sent by the heart of the sky, a deliberate act of destruction that involves a strange, thick resin falling from the heavens, a description that could easily match the fallout of hot, sticky debris from a comet's tail or impact plume. The Greek myth of Deucalion's flood, sent by an angry Zeus, is preceded by warnings from the Titan Prometheus and is survived by Deucalion and his wife Pirha floating in a great chest for 9 days and nights. The number 9 is significant. It is 1/4 of the 36-day period that makes up the ancient Babylonian month, based on zodiacal signs, hinting at a deeper calendrical astronomical knowledge embedded within the story. Perhaps most compelling of all are the numerous myths, from the Hopi to the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, that describe the flood being preceded by a period of intense heat or fire from the sky. This perfectly mirrors the sequence of a cometary impact, the brilliant fireball in the atmosphere, the searing thermal pulse, and then the deluge of water and mud from the tsunamis and atmospheric disruption. These aren't just random details, they are diagnostic clues, the forensics of a disaster preserved in story form. Ultimately, the global flood myth is more than a story of punishment. It is a warning and a promise etched in the stars and whispered across generations. It is a warning that the cosmos is not always benign, that celestial events can reach down and touch our world with apocalyptic force, but it is also a promise of resilience. In every version, a few are chosen to survive, to preserve the knowledge of the world that was, and to rebuild. This speaks to a profound human understanding of cycles, not just the cycles of the seasons or the moon, but of great cosmic cycles of destruction and renewal. The flood myth is the ultimate expression of this understanding. It tells us that civilizations can be wiped away in an instant by forces from beyond our world, but it also affirms that life will always find a way to begin again. These stories were our ancestors' way of packaging a traumatic, real-world event with a lesson for the future. They are a message in a bottle from the depths of prehistory, telling us to look up, to remember that our world is part of a larger, dynamic, and sometimes dangerous cosmic environment. The flood wasn't just water rising from the earth. It was an event that connected the fate of humanity to the violent and magnificent drama of the cosmos itself. As we reach the end of this incredible journey across cultures and epochs, a single, undeniable pattern emerges from the star-strewn tapestry of human mythology. From the violent birth of our solar system remembered by the Babylonians to the galactic structure intuited by the Norse, and from the precise planetary cycles tracked by the Maya to the dark matter allegories hidden in Hindu epics, these stories are far more than simple fables. They are a global, cross-cultural testament to a profound and sophisticated understanding of the cosmos, a lost science encoded in the most resilient medium our species has ever devised, the story. What becomes astonishingly clear is that our ancestors were not primitive stargazers simply projecting their fears onto a blank celestial canvas. They were meticulous observers, brilliant theorists, and masterful engineers of memory. They looked up and didn't just see points of light. They saw a clock, a calendar, a map, and a model of reality itself. They tracked precession across millennia, mapped the proper motion of stars, calculated complex planetary cycles, and conceived of a multi-layered, interconnected universe that resonates deeply with our most advanced physics. They accomplished this not with satellites and spectrometers, but with patient observation, genius intuition, and the narrative power to weave this immense knowledge into the very fabric of their cultural identity, ensuring its survival for thousands of years. This revelation fundamentally changes our relationship with the past and with these ancient stories. Mythology can no longer be dismissed as the quaint superstition of a bygone era. Instead, we must begin to see it for what it truly appears to be, humanity's first scientific language. These myths were the ancient equivalent of a research paper, a textbook, and a database, all rolled into one unforgettable, orally transmissible package. They are a potential repository of lost knowledge, holding observations and insights that we, with all our technology, are only now beginning to confirm and comprehend. They remind us that scientific discovery is not a linear path but a spiral, where we sometimes must circle back to the wisdom of our deepest past to find clues for our future. So the next time you look up at the night sky or hear an old myth about a hero, a god, or a monster in the stars, I invite you to listen with new ears. Listen past the surface-level drama of the story and ask a different set of questions. What celestial event could this be describing? What natural law is being personified? What deep time observation is being preserved? You are not just hearing a story, you are potentially listening to the echoes of an ancient astronomer's report, a message in a bottle cast across the ocean of time. These myths are a bridge connecting our modern scientific curiosity with the timeless human wonder that first inspired us to look up and ask, what are the secrets of the stars? The answer, it turns out, has been whispered in our stories all along. But these stories are far more than ancient history, they're an invitation. We've wandered through the star lore of countless cultures, but what about yours? Have you ever looked up at a particular constellation and felt a story waiting to be told? Perhaps you grew up hearing a unique folktale about the moon, or you witnessed a meteor shower that felt truly mystical. I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Share your favorite celestial myths, your family's stories about the stars, or even a personal experience that connected you to the cosmos. Let's create a modern tapestry of starlight together, weaving your voices into this ancient human conversation. If this journey has ignited a deeper curiosity about how our ancestors understood the heavens, there are incredible resources waiting for you. To dive further into the science behind these stories, I highly seeking out books on Archaeoastronomy, a fascinating field that studies how ancient people used astronomical knowledge in their architecture and cultural practices. Authors like Anthony Aveni and Giulio Magli have written wonderfully accessible works on the subject. For those captivated by the mythological side, the writings of Anne Baring and Jules Cashford explore the profound connections between cosmology, consciousness, and the stories we've told since the dawn of time. This video is just one glimpse into a much larger universe of mystery. If you enjoyed unraveling these secrets with me, please consider subscribing to the channel. We're just getting started. Together, we'll continue exploring the hidden codes within ancient monuments, the stunning accuracy of oral traditions, and the countless ways our forebears mapped the heavens long before the invention of the telescope. This is where wonder meets discovery, where the wisdom of the past illumines the questions of the present. So the next time you find yourself beneath a blanket of stars, remember this. You are not just looking at distant balls of gas, you are gazing upon the same constellations that inspired myth-makers, navigators, and visionaries for tens of thousands of years. Those tiny points of light are more than just physics, they are chapters in an epic story of human curiosity, a story that began when the first person looked up in awe and asked why. The answers have been whispered in the myths of every culture on Earth, a celestial inheritance patiently waiting for us to listen. The night sky is the world's oldest storybook, and every one of us is still learning.